All right. Hello and welcome to another, well, hopefully semi-exciting episode of Star Trek Europa. This is going to be a Q&A. There will be spoilers for this, so if you don't want any spoilers for the story upcoming, skip this one. This was a requested episode for a lot of people that we were talking that were on iTunes. A couple people on. Oh, hey, nice. Evelyn is a new follower.
Hey.
It gets loud in my ear and shows me on the screen, but I don't know if you guys hear it. But, anyway, so yeah, this episode was requested by some people, some fans on iTunes, as well as a couple people on the Discord were asking about, at one point asking me about doing this episode. So here we are. We're missing John as he is doing adult things, like a person should be doing. I don't know. It's
what the hell.
Loser. Anyway, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. Jack, you're the top of the list, so you can go ahead and start us off.
Oh, hello. I am Jack. You can find me over at my own channel, twitch.tv/The People's Ascension, and also on YouTube under the same name. Generally, we just kind of do hangout shows every multiple days throughout the week, but the main event for my show is a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign series that takes place every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We just kicked off a new chapter of that story. We are far away in a desert province chasing a necromantic cult and trying to find an ancient queen before they can resurrect her. So it's all kinds of new culture, new places, new monsters to check out. So if you're interested in some fantasy to go along with sci-fi we do here, go and check that out. While I'm here and doing Star Trek stuff, I am playing the First Officer, Commander Irani Ambrose.
Right. As well as a myriad of other side characters.
Yes, that's the main character. I also have, of course, Tong, who seems to be a favorite of everybody. Everybody loves Tong, including myself. We have the SSH Mark I Quartermaster, who had one really good, really cool episode, and then his memory was shunted off to a space station, so none of that actually happened for the main character. Maybe we can get that reintegrated at some kind. And of course, Jisa Shijin, a fighter pilot with no fighter craft.
Right. Because we thought that one through. And we got Tong and Ambrose and the SSH. And Tong is way over there on the side. You can figure that out. There we go.
He's hiding.
And then Jisa. So
there's also Vren, my Vulcan anthropologist, and Ranuel Samar, my counselor, but we haven't really seen them yet.
Right. I don't think we've had either one of them in any scenes yet, I don't think.
Vren was, in the background of some science meeting for like 2 minutes, but that's about it.
Gotcha. I don't even know where the other character's thing is, so all right. Oh, Ron, yeah, that's this one. This guy? Yeah, all right, there we go. So those are all the characters that Jack plays. Next up on the list, we've got Brian.
Hi, my name is Brian, he, him. You can't find me anywhere else because I'm a ghost. But I am playing, in this game, I am playing Captain Jorad Hage, the commander, the commanding officer of the USS Europa. I am also playing Oh,
It's been so long you don't remember?
Isabeth.
I'm trying to figure out
Isabeth?
which order to go in. Should it be by rank? Okay. I am also playing Yezabeth, the sensor tech. Um, well, I should say a sensor tech. Kostra, who is the chief engineer, and I am also playing Koba, the burly security officer, and then Malini Silva, the other shuttle pilot.
There we go. All right. A nice. I'm a big fan of Koba. I like Koba a lot. So.
Koba is fun.
All right, Evelyn, you're up.
I'm Evelyn. You can find me, but then I'd have to kill you. I am playing Dr. Dasavi Onayet. That's none of my people.
I know. I hit the
Okay.
wrong button.
I'm like, I
I'm-
don't know who that is. That's not me. I am also playing Rebecca O'Connor, who is my science officer, and Fiona Mills, who is my security officer, and Teketh, who is definitely totally not a Romulan bartender.
That's all the ones you got? You don't have a fifth one?
That's it.
Slacking. Everybody else
I
has
was
got
the
five.
underachiever. I know. I'm sorry.
And then, of course, John's playing everybody else that I'm not playing. So,
Everybody else.
yeah, everybody else. Like Vega and Costra Negra. I don't know how to pronounce that character's name. What is it? Shibara Navith? Is that the one? How do you
Close.
pronounce
Esriana Shabara Neva.
it? Shut up, you.
I am also playing Deffing. She was the one who got
Oh,
her.
I forgot about
All right,
Define.
Define. There
Yeah,
you
yeah,
go.
yeah.
Whoops. Yeah,
My-
she is
my Poor head
one of
nurse.
the nurses.
Yeah, I clicked on that one and it was not Evelyn. So, all right. As we said, there's going to be spoilers going forward from here. So, again, if you don't want to have any spoilers, now is a good time to pop out and, not get them. So when we last left our intrepid adventurers, there had been a Klingon kerfuffle, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
Klingon kerfuffle. No, that's
Kerfuffle is a
perfect. Do
word.
not change that.
There had been some news that maybe Worf had been killed, or at least the ship he was on was destroyed. And the Duras family, as well as their related allies, had overtaken the Empire in some fashion or another. And we discovered that Martok was still alive. We did see Martok at the end of the last adventure that we did.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about what we've seen over the course of the season so far, and what we like, what we don't like, things we're looking forward to that we'd like to see expanded on, anything like that. Anything from any of the episodes we've gone through, all the way back to Deep Space Nine to now. Anybody that wants to go ahead and talk about anything like that? I guess Jack, really, like, what so far has been your favorite moment in the campaign?
Oh man, I mean that's such a broad question, to
It
be
is.
honest. I mean, I really like our after session debriefings that we do, and I can answer like week by week what my favorite moment is, like every episode. But trying to pick out a single point is difficult.
Right.
I do feel like we had a really strong start. I really enjoyed the episodes on DS9. I think it got to show off a lot of where Ambrose was coming from and where he wanted to go. And I think through no fault of anybody, not you as the GM, not any of the players, not myself, Ambrose has kind of had a backslide in that department. The longer we've gone forward, and I would like to see that resolved, but that's something to talk about in the future.
Sure. There's some things I'd like to do with us going back to Deep Space Nine at some point, because I left a couple of threads hanging there that I think could be interesting. Like we talked about the Kai actually was told, well, I think Ambrose, right? Ambrose, she wanted Ambrose to come back and have an orb experience.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I may have to have something like that come up.
I would love to get back to DS9.
Or maybe the Kai can come out to you guys. I don't know.
Yeah, we could tie it in. Maybe there's a Bajoran colony this far out.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm not opposed to us moving away from the area occasionally too. Like it doesn't
Mhm.
bother me. Like
Right.
the Enterprise moved all over the place for no reason. We couldn't figure it out. There was no
Sure.
rhyme or reason to where they were in the universe. It made sense why they were doing it, but there was no rhyme or reason to where they were in the universe.
Right.
So, what do you got, Brian? And what is any moment that stands out that you're reminded of when you think about the game that really stands out to you?
Ooh. So I mean, I love how many different story arcs we have, or character arcs we have going on. They're pretty much every character I have a favorite scene with every character, and asking me to pick one above the others are a little like picking my own children.
Like, what storyline are you most looking forward to going forward? Like, what character's storyline are you most excited about?
I am definitely most excited about what we have planned for the Hage symbiote.
Okay.
This is spoiler alert, extra super secret spoiler alert. But when I created this character, I had it set. I wanted to explore the idea of a symbiote being put into a new host, and like how they're changed from who they were before, and what happens if people knew one symbiote and have to adjust to the new one. You saw a little bit of that in Deep Space Nine, but to be honest, in my opinion, it could have been explored further. So I'm interested in exploring that with Jorad. And yeah, I am really looking forward to exploring that. And that's definitely the thing I'm looking forward to most.
Yeah, and that is one of the reasons why we're taking the short break that we're taking now, is because we're getting closer to where that might have happened, and I didn't want to really throw the game into turmoil with one player down. Although we may still do that. There's still a lot to do before we get there, so we'll see where we get. I've been writing a lot, so hopefully something that I've written I can throw in before we get to that point, because it's a little ways away. Evelyn, what about you? What's your thoughts on things?
I think kind of like Jack and Brian have said, it's really hard to pick just one or even just really a handful. I think the ones that come to mind are probably the more recent pieces. I really want to see the Dasavi Ambrose connection that we've got going, where that goes, because I've been having fun with that telepathy piece. I really want to see Dasavi and Define come to a place of understanding. I like this friction, and we haven't gotten to play with it more because, you don't spend a whole lot of time in the med bay. But I'd
We
like
need to
to
get in more
see that play out.
firefights.
Yeah.
No.
Well, you're at war with the Klingons now, so
Right. Every day is gonna be a firefight. And I had another one. Oh, I've got some stuff with Mills that meeting your heroes kind of stuff that she's gonna be dealing with all the recent Ambrose kind of going off the rails there for a minute.
I'm curious to see how Ambrose is going to handle being back in a war type situation with the Europa being one of the only few ships in the area. There's definitely going to be some disputed territory out here. We're going to get to see some wartime Ambrose and some wartime Hage, really, too. Like
I've been binging DS9, the later seasons of DS9, so I got it up here.
Right.
I think the first thing is going to be a big "I told you so" party.
I've been watching a bunch of the episodes that really fit into that, because into DS9 as well, because I want to capture some of that flavor. I don't want to get quite that. I always felt the DS9 had a little bit too much of the CGI space battles that don't really mean anything. The CGI armies being flung at each other. I like it. There's a lot of good tension and stuff, but there's a couple points, especially in season 7, where it's like, and you did that, why? Especially near the end of season 7, where ships get blown up for no reason, like no reason at all, because they're back in an episode later. I don't know. If you're gonna do the story, if you're gonna do something like that, you need to make that stick. Like if the Europa blows up, I guarantee you it's not coming back the next episode.
Yeah.
So, well, time travel, maybe, I don't know, but
there's a whole other Europa we've encountered.
Yeah, you guys know how to go to black holes now, certain black holes, and not get crushed by them. At least
We go
you
to
know.
an alternate universe, we hijack their ship, we bring that back to our universe.
Yeah.
That's definitely doesn't have any moral implications.
Well, we can rescue the one trapped 1,000 years into a singularity, because that certainly won't have any problems associated with it.
right.
Right. Not
I would
this.
really
Is it really
enjoy
wor-
going through the storyline that I actually had for the Eva on that ship
Mhm.
at some point, because I had story stuff for if you guys went over there and dealt with that Eva, which obviously we didn't do, which is totally fine. I'm fine with totally skipping stuff for the sake of being intelligent, because going to that ship would not have been a smart thing to do. But I was interested in seeing if you guys would do it, because it was the Star Trek thing to do. Going to that ship was the Star Trek thing to do. Maybe not the smart thing, but the Star Trek thing.
Yeah, it's funny you should bring that up because I actually did want to talk about that. It seems like sometimes we err on the side of doing the smart thing to do when it's not necessarily the most interesting thing to do, nor the Star Trek thing to do. I'll admit I was talking with some friends today, and I expressed a little bit of my frustration with the fact that like Hage has. Every time I leave the bridge, I feel like I get yelled at, in character, and like I really enjoyed the pushback on that episode, but it did end with me promising to never do it again.
Right.
So like it, and like I was watching. I have also been watching Deep Space Nine because it's good stuff, and like I've been noting every time that Cisco goes and does something, and I'm like, well, Cisco goes and does something, why can't Hage?
Yeah,
Yes.
but by comparison, how
But-
many times is that compared to everyone else on the ship? Most of
A
the time, he
lot.
stays where
A
he's
lot.
supposed to stay.
Oh, no.
He does it a
No,
lot.
actually, Cisco does leave the ship a lot. But my
Yeah.
rebuttal is Cisco is one of the most best fit military minds of the war, and Hage is a hundreds of year old man.
Yeah, that's Ambrose's opinion, anyways.
I think you're doing him a little bit of disservice there. He hasn't done any. Has he done anything that has like made him seem tactically incompetent? And you can't say
From a
because
Star Trek perspective or from a gamer perspective.
from a Star Trek
Right.
perspective,
No,
because we're
from-
playing Star Trek.
Right, no.
Do you remember that time on the ship when there was an ensign in the captain's seat?
I mean,
Because
doesn't count.
everybody else was on a space station full of murderous robots that
How
I've
often-
warned
how-
the captain against multiple
that wasn't
times.
him who put him in the captain sheet.
So
That
you
was
get you got four major characters in the original series, right? You've got Scotty, Spock, Kirk, and McCoy. Everybody else in that ship does not matter. And how often do those four go on every away team mission? Or at least three of those four are on every away team mission. I have no problem with it being that way. Like there's bound to be lieutenant or lieutenant commander somewhere on that ship that is commanding when you're not there. Part of the reason, so as long as we're on the topic, part of the reason I wanted to do this game with such a heavy AI element on the Europa was because I wanted to have that small crew feeling, right? The Europa's a pretty big ship. It's the Luna class ships are fairly large, and they have a sizable crew. But I wanted something that was more like the Voyager size crew, which is about where we're at, is the size of the Voyager. Part of that was to help increase the tension when you've got a smaller crew. It makes it easier to have small storylines that are going on. And one of the reasons that you guys are playing so many characters is to help flesh out that crew. It just so happens that most of the side characters you guys are playing are low ranking because that's the way the rules work for making low ranking characters, the lower decks type characters. One thing that I had not anticipated though was normally I tend to run more of the crew NPCs. And there really hasn't been room for that because there's been so many, your characters have so many storylines and stuff. I don't want to throw a lot more in with NPCs because they're not needed. They're story that you guys are doing.
Which
if it
I
helps
do
make
appreciate.
the story feel better, I have a number of NPC stories, especially for Ambrose to deal with, that are like, these two people are fighting on the ship, or these two, there's this thing going on over here, and like first officer level stuff to deal with. But I hadn't done any of it because I didn't feel like we needed it.
Yeah. I literally quit a game because there were too many NPCs.
Mm.
I was playing this game and like the GM made all the supporting characters, and half the time we just ended up having to play the supporting characters all the time.
Mm.
So I appreciate that you allowed us to create supporting characters and play them out rather than using NPCs.
Yeah. Well, it's an extension of what you were doing for your game. Actually, you had us all make a secondary character, and I liked the idea, so I kind of wanted to go with that. And my Lexington game that we don't record and we don't like, it's just a game that we're playing for friends, or were. It's been on hold for a while, but um, that game, no one has a secondary character, like nobody, and it ends up
We've got
getting.
a couple.
Do you like?
They don't.
Well, yeah, that's true. There's a couple that have come in over time, but
Yeah.
we've been playing that game for 3.5, 4 years, and there's like 3 or 4 secondary characters. So I have played a significant number more NPCs, and I kind of wanted to step back from that for this and give you guys a chance to tell the stories you want to tell, and give you a palette that is much wider, much broader to tell more stories. But again, if we want to get into having like talking about the sub characters that are there, like the the second in command of ops or whatever that is not a PC, that character can be brought up occasionally and just referenced. If it makes it feel like there's more depth to the crew, I don't have to have them have storylines and stuff, but they can be involved a little bit just to give the ship a feeling of more depth.
I don't think that's really necessary. And I think that I feel like incidents where, the ensign's at the helm, I thought that made for a really good story.
I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
It made Ambrose mad, but I thought it was hilarious.
I mean, I also want to point out, soon enough, Ambrose is going to be in command. And do you really want Ambrose to never leave the ship?
I've actually been grappling with that.
Okay, then why don't we just agree that this is Star Trek, and then the captain's allowed to go do things?
Well, see, the problem with this is Star Trek is that every season is drastically different, and I've always been. That's what I mean. Every series is drastically different, and I've always, or for most of my Star Trek viewing experience, I've leaned heavily towards the Next Generation era, which is drastically different than the DS9 era and the Voyager era, and there is precedence to say that the captain does go on away missions, but it's usually only on the most serious of away missions or away missions that they have a personal stake in, and there usually is some sort of backlash from somebody, a first officer or an admiral, whoever. Somebody is like, this is a bad decision, and the captain has to be like, I know, but I'm doing it anyway.
It's definitely a flavor of Next Gen.
To be honest, I probably threw it on a little hard with Ambrose, but he was also going through some stuff, and he was mad at you for other reasons as well. So he laid it on pretty thick. But I think it just comes down to the trajectory that the narrative of this story goes down, because the narrative of Next Generation is drastically different from the narrative of Voyager and DS9. And if it comes to a point where and we've said before, I've said before, I'd pretty much toss out the original series, which I know is Star Trek heresy, but I disregard it as nonsense. But I think if we get into a point where it seems like it's necessary and beneficial for the captain to be around, and it makes sense for the captain to be around, and by around I mean at Alpha the ship on away missions, then I think it would make sense. But I don't think, and by extension or maybe more appropriately, Ambrose didn't think it was necessary for the captain to be around when he was there. I think if Hage waited for the all clear instead of insisting he go when he did, it probably wouldn't be as big of a deal.
But then he waits until the story's over.
Right.
I mean,
perhaps.
Yeah, like,
I would like to.
There is one thing I can do.
Multiple plot lines. I would like there to be an away mission plot line and a ship plot line, because that's how it was kept interesting in the Next Generation. There should be things for the captain to do on the ship. That's where the diplomacy. That's where the main of the diplomacy that takes place.
Earlier in the series.
Problems that takes place. There's there's problems with the crew that takes place, and the
Right.
captain should be able to have a storyline on the ship, about within the ship, about being with
But
multiple ships, while other people
Right.
are on the ground.
but I don't want his entirety of every adventure to be him being on the ship, waiting for something to come to him.
There is definitely more I can do, and it's one of the things that I did earlier in the series that I have not been as successful with later in the series, which is having the split storylines.
Mhm.
We've talked about how that really does help with the pacing of the story, and it is essential to doing a Star Trek television series, right? You need to have an A plot, a B plot, maybe a C and D plot even. And it could be, I mean, we can run stories where like Hage is a many lifetimed creature who has experience in a wide berth of areas. So there are definitely reasons we can have Hage go down on a mission and leave Ambrose on the ship to deal with
Sure.
stuff
Mhm.
that's going on.
And that is another good point. If you want to go down, well, maybe now that
Yeah, see,
Mills is
you'll
now that
insist on
Mills
coming.
now that Mills is starting to show off a bit more. If but you're right. Early on, Ambrose would have insisted on coming on for your security.
Yeah. And I mean, there's definitely because we've got such a small crew and we've got players playing multiple roles, you're the XO and the chief of security.
Mhm.
That does put a higher burden on the main cast of characters as far as when you go down. When Ambrose goes down, you've lost 2 main bridge positions.
Mhm.
So that is a thing to think about as well. But we can certainly do some more things storyline wise that get Hage into more of the away team mission stuff and keep Ambrose on the ship a little bit more often. Even if Ambrose doesn't want to go, he doesn't necessarily get a choice. Like Hage is going to go on this mission, and Ambrose is in charge of the ship. You know.
I would just like a little less emphasis on what the captain is allowed and allowed to do.
Sure.
Is all I'm asking. So
Yeah.
like, you can like maybe next time he goes and he wants to come along, you can like make a pithy comment, but then let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
We don't need to make it a whole sub arc of the adventure where everybody's mad at Hage because he came along.
Right.
So I get what you're saying on that. And I get the out of character frustration. I also feel like you're now dictating how we're supposed to play our characters, and that's not fair either.
I see what you're saying.
He's
I'm just
requesting,
saying,
not necessarily dictating.
yeah, I'm just saying a frustration that I've had, and it's I mean, Hage is my main character, and
Sure.
I don't feel like I've played him that much.
Yeah. You've definitely played Elizabeth a lot more.
Yeah.
I mean, by that same token, Dasavi has had very little screen time.
Yeah.
To the point that like Mills feels more like my main than Dasavi does. So I get you on that point. I also think I would argue that the conflict between Ambrose and Hage and Dasavi and Hage on Hage's decision to go down on that space station made for good story.
Yeah.
And you can decide from that point like where you take it, and you want to make that, and we want to flip that and make that an in character discussion at the next away mission. You can walk back to that conversation that Hage and Ambrose had about where Ambrose said, you're right, I'm not ready for that chair because I'm not ready to be stuck on the ship. And Hage turning around going, you know what? You need to get ready for command. Your ass is staying here. I'm going. Suck it up.
You also have the context, like, so it's difficult to do, but Star Trek is not normal like role playing. It is not Dungeons and Dragons where around every corner you're going to find a trap or mimics and all that kind of stuff. So there is a mentality difference that I've talked about it in the Star Trek in my podcast a few times of getting into the mindset of a universe that is, for all intents and purposes, the most privileged you can possibly be. Like there is safety everywhere you go, even in Starfleet. Like the ships that you see on television are by far the not normal, and even the Enterprise with all the crazy crap they go through, they're just always blindly walking into shit. I'm not saying anyone should do that, but there is definitely a mentality that needs to be there that is not the D&D mentality of we need to be super cautious about, we must check for traps in every room. We must make sure that everyone's wearing gloves at all times, that we have the rogue over here and the healer over here and the, and I don't know how much of that really bleeds into your guys' role playing. I don't have an answer for that, but I know that if you're thinking about again, I agree with you guys that the story that you guys did with the conflict with Hage was really good. I can also see that if that were to continue in 2, 3, 4 more episodes at that level of control, that's not only going to get to be a problem for Brian as a player, it would be boring television as well. So there definitely has to be a progression going forward from that, from all of the characters going forward. And I don't know how you guys want to resolve that, but it's certainly something to think about going forward, that like where we've done the story where Ambrose gets to say, I told you, get to say, stay here, gets kind of an, I told you so. But what's the next step? Because Hage didn't get injured. He did really help out in that situation. He was very beneficial to be there. So it's not, Hage also gets an I told you so in a lot of ways. So where's the next step with that? Think about going forward, where we're going to take that and how we're going to mold that into Ambrose's story, as far as he's going to have to take command eventually, Dasavi understanding that, you're not even a command officer, so you don't really necessarily know the hazards and difficulty of being in command. I think it's something that when we talk about Dasavi getting trained in that situation, in the command stuff, I think it would be a good point for Hage to make. And I'll see if I can come up with an episode for that. That, sometimes you have to make the hard choice, and sometimes you have to go, and regulations don't always mean what, aren't always correct, I think it's something to think about. I think it'd be fun. It's definitely something to I know Brian doesn't want, I know I don't want the players to dictate to any other player how they should be playing their character.
Yeah, absolutely not. I'm just saying,
So.
I'm not trying to dictate what you do. I'm just saying a worry I have, and I don't want to force anybody to do anything. I'm just telling you where I'm coming from. And, I trust you all want this game to be fun for me as much as I want to make this game fun for you. And so I'm just expressing that.
Well, it's good that you bring this up, because the past several episodes, I've been brought back to one of the questions I asked during our session 0, and I remember it very well because it was a very important question for me, and that was the question on how you planned Hage's command style, his captain style, and I specifically asked, "Are you more of a Picard or are you more of a Kirk?" And it was my understanding that we settled that you were more of a Picard, more of a next generation type of captain. And I even asked, hey, if that's the case, Ambrose would insist you stay on the ship, like a Riker to Picard situation. I'm fairly certain that's where we ended up. So I was confused when Hage was so insistent on leaving. And I think that particular question in session 0 really informed who Ambrose is. Sure. And
I remember that question being more, I interpreted it as more about his personality, not necessarily his logistics. So, if that question had been, do you mind staying on the ship most missions? I probably would have been diplomatic and said maybe half the time, I definitely would not have wanted it to be he never leaves the ship.
Yeah. Like I said, there's a lot I can do to help fix this problem too. Like I can come up with more storylines that make the character more prominent. Are those geese babies or what's going on? I don't know who's babies.
It sounds like someone has toddlers. Your geese are sounding disturbingly human today.
That might be on my side. Unfortunately, for reasons I'd rather not go into, there will be a screaming baby around for the foreseeable future.
Okay. My deepest
it's
apologies.
Not my screaming baby. I don't have any screaming babies. So it really frustrates me that it's
seriously
become a
no
problem
resentment
for myself.
there. I hear no resentment there, Mr. Ambrose. Anyways, there's a lot I can do to help correct I think part of the problem is that if there's nothing, if you're on the ship and there's not a lot of extra storylines going on, it gets frustrating because you don't have an opportunity to play your character very much. So that's something that I can certainly make an effort to put more work into. So,
Well, I appreciate you all listening to me. I appreciate every.
So I'm not laughing at Brian. I'm laughing
No,
at
I get it.
that was
I do
aggressive.
appreciate you all
It was
listening.
quite aggressive. I just assumed it was more geese. So,
No.
but no, this is one of the things that this session is about anyways. Like we want to make sure that it's a health check for the storyline too.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, so I don't want to lay it on too thick with you anymore. So I will keep that in mind. And to be honest, I really think that that story arc has come to a resolution. It might, yeah, there might be a sort of pithy remark in the future, but I think we've played that out as much as we can, and I think it would be interesting for as with a lot of things, for Ambrose and Hage to find an equilibrium with that command style and try to resolve, when it's appropriate to go off the ship, and there might be some more butting of heads, but I don't want it to feel. I want to get away from
the antagonistic
approach between the first officer and the captain. And
That
I
was-
think, and I'm hoping with the way that this therapy plays out, and I was really hoping it would last more than half a session, that through talking it through with the counselor, talking it through with other characters, going through different things, that might help facilitate Hage being able to step back from his wartime mentality and see where Hage is coming from. Unfortunately, he had about half an episode to get over his shit, and then surprise, we're back to a wartime mentality. So that's kind of I'm kind of thrown right now as to how Ambrose is going to resolve all of that.
Nothing like a little more pressure. I like the idea of seeing the storyline progress. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do that. It's funny to me that we've actually had a lot of ups and downs in the storyline of Hage and Ambrose, and there was a point there when it felt like there was some tension at the very beginning. The tension kind of got resolved, and you guys were like really on the same page, and then we hit that point where that tension came back. I think it's a really good way to do things, the up and down wave, and we're now at a point where we've hit the peak of the one wave, and we're now heading back into the valley of you guys getting along, and we'll see where it goes from there. I'm looking forward to it. As far as Dasavi goes, being someone who's played a chief medical officer, I'm well aware that it is sometimes difficult to get yourself in the story.
Yeah.
Feel
and
free.
It's fine. I'm not super upset about it. Like I don't feel bored. It's not like I don't have anything to do. It's not like I'm sitting back waiting for shit to happen. Because Mills keeps me plenty busy.
Yeah. One of the things I will say about one, Star Trek doesn't have a lot, like especially if you look at Next Gen, Beverly is barely a main character. Like they changed Doctor out in season 2, and it's like, did they do a thing? I don't know.
No. They did a thing, and Pilarski was terrible.
I like Pulaski, but
she became redeemable at the very end, and then she went away.
I like the actress. I like her from the original series stuff that she did. I liked her in Next Gen a little bit. Like Pulaski is hard to like, but if you look at her in a McCoy kind of mentality, she's not too bad.
See, she was mean to Data, and that was just a whole thing for me. I love Data, and you can't be mean to Data.
Yeah,
but she was mean at first, and then grew to like.
She redeemed herself.
Slowly,
but slowly.
She had a 1-season story arc. I mean,
if she had come on and loved Data from the very start, I would have found that less interesting.
Well, it just felt forced and unnecessary. It felt like they were really trying to shoehorn McCoy back into the series, and I don't think Next Generation had need for another McCoy.
No, I agree. But you got her, and you're stuck with her. So I found to like her after many, many years. It took me a long time to appreciate Pulaski, but nonetheless, like, so when I played in Brian's game, while I was able to continue playing, which unfortunately had to leave a little early, but the way that I was able to start getting the Doctor into things more often was there's not a lot of medical stuff to do. Like it's a Star Trek problem. It's there's actually, I think there's a rules problem with that in the system. Because it's just a die roll to fix things. It's hard to come up with tension for the Doctor.
Right.
So one thing that I tended to do was just go on away team missions and hang out with the captain. was kind of my bag. I didn't get I didn't get to explore as much of that as I would have liked to. But it's certainly something to think about. Like you are the doctor, but you're also a senior staff. Like you're a commander or a lieutenant commander. You have authority even without having necessarily being in the normal command structure.
Right.
And the doctor's in a very unique position. One of the reasons I like playing the doctor, and I want to play a doctor again in the future. In fact, I want to play the same doctor I've been playing in the future. One of the nice things about that is you can kind of insert yourself because you're kind of inside the chain of command and outside the chain of command. So you have authority. You have a little bit more authority than other people of similar rank to you. I think it's an interesting role to be able to explore. So there's something you can do with that, I hope. I do want to do some more storylines. I have 2 storylines that are plagues, essentially. Only one's a plague, but they're the big medical episodes where everyone is rushing around to save these people. That was like kind of thing. Some typical Star Trek type stuff.
I am looking forward to those as well because I would like to see Deffing in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
We've got some stuff.
I want to see more of Mar also. So the whole medical staff to me has is extremely interesting. So
yeah.
Well, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Having 2 counselors, I'm not sure is a great idea.
Right.
What about if you play another doctor? And so that way, if there is one of those big medical scenes where we can all participate.
It would be Jack would have to be the one to swap out because
Right.
Samar is the character that we've barely seen. I think we haven't seen that character at all, really.
We've seen Mar a few times. Yeah.
It was big on DS9, but after that didn't come up too much, unfortunately.
Well, that's
you're talking about.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So that way everyone has one medical character essentially.
Yeah. Because then nobody gets left out.
Do we need 3 doctors though?
That's what I was thinking.
I mean, we need 3 doctors I think we need 3 doctors less than we need 2 counselors.
You could also, it doesn't have to be doctors. Like you could be nurses. You could be you could make one of the security officers be like a combat medic, something like that. There are options for it if you want to do something, but again, it's not required either.
And I'm fine if we never have need for renewal. That's fine with me. We don't need to shoehorn him in there if it's not necessary. But unless we are going to have medical problems be a big part of the story where we need 4 medical officers in a situation, I'm not sure it would.
I think it would be fun to have Tong just stuck with a bunch of doctors on a planet somewhere.
I did enjoy Tong's delivery assistance scene.
Fantastic. Dasavi would totally support Tong just hanging out with the doctors.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
I like Tong as a fish out of water character because and this is something we can move into like what characters we like and why we like them. Like I like Tong a lot because he seems like a fish out of water in every situation, including the transporters, which he's really good at. But just the character in Starfleet seems very fish out of water. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of what you're going to do with that character, like how he's going to advance personality-wise, because clearly he is being leaned on kind of heavy. The situation of saving Eva through the Arrow Wing, that's a big move for the chief engineer to come to you to help him out with that.
Oh yeah.
So
before we move on too far, I did want to do one more thing with Dasavi. I do want to note I think Dasavi has reason to go on every away mission. Like even if it's just in case somebody gets hurt, I think there's always a reason for the TMO to go on away missions and stuff. So
sure. That's where I'm at with it too. Like, especially since you're a telepath. I mean, now having 2 telepaths on a scene is not a bad thing necessarily. It's terrible for me. Sure. I hate it. I fucking hate telepaths. But
and with her supposed to be learning command, and with Hage wanting to get off the ship more, we've definitely built the framework for that. For Hage to say, all right, Ambrose, you stay. I'm taking Dasavi with me. I'm teaching her how to run an away mission.
Yeah, it would be cool. That would be a really cool thing.
I know that Jack tries to discredit the original series. I like the original series. It is hokey. Oh my God, it's hokey. Season 3 is god awful. But I like the dynamic that you get from the three main characters, Spock, McCoy, and Kirk. Their dynamic is amazing, and it's Doctor, Science Officer, First Officer, whatever, and Captain, and I think it's really interesting. And I don't see there any reason why the four players can't have characters that go down on all these missions that have that connection. Ambrose, I understand the logic of next gen and why you don't send the captain and the first officer down, because it's stupid to lose both your main characters in one scene. But again, from a Star Trek perspective, doesn't really matter as much.
Right.
From a storytelling perspective, you know. So
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with you guys sending all three down. Doesn't bother me at all. All four down, because you send down
I'm right there.
Cass as well. But anyway, so let's talk about let's talk about the main characters. Well, we've talked mostly about the main characters when we want their storylines to go. Let's talk about secondary characters when we want to see some of their stories going. The main character that I think we see the most, or the secondary character we see the most of, is clearly Yezabeth, right?
Mhm.
So Yezabeth has had this storyline going on so far. It's not even a storyline; it's a dice-propelled subplot where you just keep being unable to do the things you want to do and succeeding at them, or at least succeeding them into the way you had intended. Like, how is that played out for you? Like, have you enjoyed what we've done with that?
Absolutely.
Are you tired of that crap?
I have no complaints about everything that's happened with her.
Okay.
She's a disaster person, and like
Disaster person.
it's going to make it all the more interesting when she gets the Hage symbiote. And I kind of really like I didn't at first, I'll admit this, but I kind of like how she's currently support character with support character stats. And then as soon as she gets the symbiote, it's like, boom, player character upgrade.
Right.
You know, she'll be more competent at everything because she's got the symbiote. But then that opens up questions. Is she more competent because of the symbiote? Or is she,
right. It's that's a mechanical change that I think can breed a lot of interesting role playing.
Mhm.
So I'm looking forward to that. Where do you see Yezabeth going? Like, she doesn't had her own main storyline because she's a secondary character. But like, what have you enjoyed, and what are you looking forward to with that character as far as other characters interact with and storylines you want to see going forward with her, other than obviously the main storyline we're going to do?
I definitely want to see what happens with the friendship with Mills.
Okay.
I think that is going to be the crux relationship with her, where she's most different from before and after. And I really am curious to see what happens there. I don't want to decide ahead of time, but I
Sure.
would just love to.
One of the nice things about the secondary characters that I've enjoyed is watching there has been no necessary plan for a lot of them. So it's interesting to see how that changes organically. Is Shinwiki yelling at you?
Yeah, Shinwiki would like out, I think.
Okay.
Maybe. Or maybe Shinwiki just wants to stare at me while I open the door for him.
Just yell,
Leave.
yeah.
I mean, it's how he do.
It's how we do.
I mean, y'all missed Roy displaying all his bits for you a few minutes ago.
I don't know if I missed it, but all right, Jag, you've got a second. Who has been, you think is your main secondary character has obviously been Tong, and we talked a little bit about that. What are you looking forward to as far as storylines with Tong? Like we've seen him taking or being thrust into more responsible situations, but you haven't done much in the way of advancing the character. So what are you looking to do with that character?
Well, I mean, he is probably my most used secondary character, but I feel like I play my secondary characters far less than everybody else. So even though Tong is my most forward-facing secondary character, he's really only had so much screen time, and I don't think he's really had enough time in order to develop. At least until the point where we are at now. That last mission, as you said, with being tasked with helping Eva out and really having a big impact on saving the ship and saving the away team and the success of that mission, and working with Eva in the future now that John is gone and all of his characters are receding into the background. I do have plans for Tong moving forward, and I think, as you said, it's going to be a transition from his sort of fish out of water ensign state to a much more to a more precarious state that will hopefully come out with him being more more competent and more confident. And I sort of have I've been playing around with a value for him because we had that major
Storyline, arc point.
storyline, arc point,
Right.
whatnot, and I do want to give him a value. And I'm thinking something along the lines of I have to do everything I can to live up to the confidence others see in me.
Okay.
So it's not
I love it.
necessarily about him actually being confident in his abilities. It's they are saying I'm good enough to do this. I have to do this, or I am not good enough.
Sure. I get that. I've had that mentality most of my
Mhm.
life.
And just so and I really want to make sure that Tong isn't just a reskinned Nog, but I
Right.
think with him being probably one of the very few Ferengian Starfleet, he is both, as you said, out of water, and really has something to prove
Right.
while
That
being in a position where he's kind of going against his normal sort of inbred mentality from his culture,
right.
and being thrown into a different culture with different values. It's kind of jarring.
Right.
Mhm.
That's one thing I was going to say is Tong may very well be the second Ferengi in Starfleet.
Yeah.
Um, how do you think that? I mean, do you have any ideas of what you want to do as far as stories is to express that, like to deal with the fact that you are so kind of isolated, a Worf Nog kind of character? I mean, do you just kind of want to let it go and just kind of be on the side there, or do you have any desire to play out some of that potential? Um, I don't want to say oppression. What's what I'm looking for? The prejudices.
Um, I, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'll be honest. I've put far less thought into
Mm,
the development of my secondary characters as I have my main character.
sure,
Um, and I'm kind of just writing my secondary characters and seeing where they're going.
sure.
I would definitely like to see more Tong and Kostra and have that sort of mentor relationship.
Yeah,
And even I'm not sure I would even say in the last mission it was really a mentor situation and more of a just here you are kid get to work sort
right.
of situation. Um, so that could be interesting to explore, certainly. I don't think, unfortunately, Tong has really had any major interactions with any of the other characters except perhaps Eva, and I think that's going to be the uh, main motivator of Tong's character development is could be his interactions with Eva going forward. Because now that we don't have John, now that we don't have Cass, and it seems to be this is the case. I was thinking that Tong would at this point now be that sort of liaison between
Right.
Eva and the rest of the ship, working on creating that avatar for her and spearheading those existential crises that they'll probably have together because Tong is also still very young and
Right.
as you said, in a completely new situation. So I think there's going to be and I don't know how you feel about that with it being one of my characters in an NPC as opposed to one of my characters in another player's character. But I think the Eva Tong relationship can really do a lot in bringing out both Tong and Eva.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that could be a lot of fun to go and play around with. I actually enjoy playing the existential. I enjoy the role playing of the existential moments
Hmm.
of Eva's crises, and I think you're right. The having that to go along with the existential crisis that Tong is probably having in almost every moment of his life. I think, or at least that is the way it seems sometimes. I think that could be fun. I think you're right. I'm looking forward. I can certainly do something more with that.
And I
Um,
would like to see more of Tong's Ferenginess come out
mhm,
because I
Mm.
have one of his values as item appraisal, which is probably never going to come up, but it would be interesting if it does. And
sure.
I just watched the episode of DS9 where Nog was helping O'Brien get some part for the ship, and he had to trade this to this
Oh
person
yeah,
to get that, to get that,
Yes.
this
the
and
great
that, and this and
material
that. The great
continuum.
material continuum, and
Yeah,
I would love to see more Tong finding a way to bridge his Ferenginess with Starfleet and sort of
yeah,
come together.
yeah. That could be fun. What to think about
What
that?
what do you what do you think about the idea if we run into Ferengi out here in the sector? Would that be interesting for him?
Yeah, that could be cool.
There will be Ferengi out here.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I've got a few of them. Not nice people, Ferengi. Those Ferengi. So that'll actually could make it even more interesting. What about the SSH? Like you do the SSH. We've only seen him a couple times, but right now he's kind of trapped on the station, like running it.
Well, we did sort of copy and paste his personality. So
Right.
the main SSH is still on the Europa,
Right.
but his copy is over on that space station, and I actually
Right.
have it written down in my notes because he did earn a side character milestone, but I have it in my notes as hold for possible reintegration of Helleron station copy. I'm not going
Right.
to give him a milestone until or if he reintegrates with the copy that actually grew from those experiences.
Right. I'm actually thinking when we go back to the station, I kind of really want the integration to happen again. I don't know if it'll happen with you guys the way depending on how you guys do what you want to do.
But the main problem is,
yeah.
Are they two different people now?
Right.
Is there a right to integrate
Right.
them?
Right. Well, I mean, technically, they're not really sentient AIs, right? So that's a moral question that you guys have to answer in game. But the doctor becomes one because he's been on for so long.
I would imagine at this point that since the SSH is running the station, he's probably on 24/7, just like the doctor is.
But
so maybe the SSH
Europa,
on the Europa isn't as sentient. I would say he's still a sentient AI. It's just Starfleet prejudice that they don't consider him a full-fledged AI.
Right,
but I would say that the SSH on the station is more humanly noticeable as a sentient AI, and there is that conundrum of, are they two different people? Is there a right to merge them together?
I think that could be a really fun. I don't know how to bring that up in the story. Like I'll have to figure out how to frame a story for that. But I think that's a really interesting moral dilemma for the crew to have to face.
My only concern with such an episode is that it puts me in a position where I am talking to myself a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's clearly a B plot anyways. It wouldn't have to, it wouldn't be a main plot. And Ambrose, I would not have in that situation. He would probably be off somewhere else. That's a Hage decision, in my opinion. Like
I say
Hage
that's
and
a
Wasabi
Hage,
even.
Yeah, we could do that. I was thinking more like an O'Connor and Cass conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've been getting into those ethical pieces.
In the end, it's a Hage decision, right? He's the one who decides if that's, because whatever the captain decides in the long run, that's the law of the land. So if he decides that he's not, that they're not sentient AIs, unless it's taken up above him, at least in the moment, there's no one to dispute that with him. Like in the end, push the button or get the fuck off my ship.
Right.
So that's an interesting one there. And I think it could actually be fun if we do that. Because I don't plan for you guys to go back to the station anytime, like immediately. Like that's going to be a down the line story. But Kaz being an expert in AI, I think that could be a really fun conversation. I'm looking forward to that. I have to figure that out. Maybe make a note.
I definitely don't see Hage making the decision suddenly and without any input from anybody else. So
no.
Yeah. So
we can have all of the above.
But at the same time, I think I would like to see more of the SSH, on the Europa, the one that we have available to us.
Well, so now that we're installing more of the hollow projectors around the ship, Tong is going to be doing that, I guess, because Eva wanted to be able to move around more. It doesn't limit just Eva to being able to move around more. With the hollow projectors, if they're given access to them, the Doctor can move around more. Which we've only seen once, which is fine. He's an NPC, but we can see the SSH move around a little bit more. We can have more interaction with these characters once these projectors are installed, which can really just, it's off screen, doesn't matter. They're installed now. So that could be fun.
I just got an idea. What if the SSH wants quarters?
Could be interesting.
Eventually, maybe. I think that he would need to be on for a lot longer.
I think that would be a fun thing to do after the reintegration.
Yeah.
So I think certainly after the reintegration were to happen, if it were to happen, it would create a lot more depth to the character and a lot more potential for the storylines for that character.
But
So-
the reason I made the SSH, which is Security Services Hologram, is not just to be a quartermaster. He's not just the guy who gets you bed sheets and a pillow and checks and makes sure all the power cells and phasers are working. My idea was, since we clearly had away team security officers, that he could function as the on-ship security officer. So when we're away on on an away mission, if there's a problem on the ship, the SSH can literally be anywhere at any time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
Yeah. And we're certainly making that a reality now. So
yeah.
Right.
Um,
Disnobby's
So
gonna be
again, that comes
so
back
mad.
to more. We need an away mission plot and a ship plot.
sure.
Legit.
Ev.
Yeah.
Your primary backup character is, or secondary character, I should say, not backup character, has been Mills, I think.
Yes. For sure.
There's been a lot. Actually, I think Mills has probably had just about the right up there as the most secondary development of a character. Tied up there with like Elizabeth. So what are you looking forward to? Like, obviously you the character security, and you've had the advancement of even Ambrose is starting to look at her like this person is a worthy successor to my position, possibly, or at least to be tested in a way that maybe she can elevate. What are you looking forward to as far as storylines with that characters go?
I'm looking forward to seeing her pursue that chief of security position. I'm really looking forward to the the integration piece that she and Yasbeth are working on with the linking science and security together. And I'm looking forward to exploring how she feels about, I think I talked about this a little earlier, how she feels about Ambrose's breakdown and kind of that like that moment where you realize your heroes are human.
Mm-hmm.
And how she manages that.
You've also had a little bit of conflict with the captain, although I don't think it's actually come out, right?
Yes, no, that has not come out. And I don't know how that's going to play out like on screen, because she would never, she's got that very rigid professionalism. So she's not going to come to the captain and be like, get off my fucking toes, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, you get up all the way off my back about that.
Right.
I think that's a problem for the first officer.
Right.
It is.
Even if it,
And go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, even if it doesn't come up like in play, even if she doesn't go, once he dies, he's gonna know every bad thing she said to Yezebeth.
True.
Yeah, but that's not something that character's going to know at all.
No.
That's a whole nother bag of worms.
Worms.
Yeah, it's a whole other belly of worms. That's the thing to keep notes on too, Brian.
Yeah, I am. Trust me. As soon as we had that conversation, I was like, pay dirt.
So like as far as Mills goes, I think so we talk about promotions. We haven't talked about promotions, but we've kind of off screen talked about promotions. I think personally that some of these characters are most assuredly eligible for some promotions, and I think Mills is one of the ones that probably deserves one. I think Elizabeth is probably one that deserves one. But again, with that in mind, like if you were to take on a greater role on the ship, how would that change the way? Like, let's say you were the chief of security. Now you're in charge of a position. You're a senior officer aboard the ship. Would that change the way you interact with the captain at all, or would it still be that rigid, keep my mouth shut kind of deal?
I think it would still be that rigid, keep my mouth shut. She very much toes the line. I think she would feel, especially if with it in that security position, she would feel more emboldened to bring that to the first officer at the very least. And there may come a point where we have a permission to speak freely situation.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It could be interesting. Um, I want to talk about one of your secondary characters before we move around to anybody else,
Yeah.
and that is the character whose name I don't recall because we've never used him.
Teketh?
Teketh. That's the one. We use him, but not much.
We use him. Yeah, no, he's only been on screen like twice.
Yeah, and they've been one
They
of them
were
has been
good.
super interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, they were good.
Um, so again, this is like heavy spoiler stuff going forward, and I don't know how much the players even know about what you're going to do with this character. Although I think we discussed it early
Yeah,
on.
it's no secret to the players, and the audience knows. The characters do not.
Right. Um, clearly the character has some connection to, and we haven't really even established what it is, but some connection to the
Right.
remaining Romulan government, like active
Mhm.
Romulan government. What you had a nice conversation with someone who may or may not have been Sela. At
Right.
least the silhouette was Sela because I couldn't find any other silhouette for what I was looking for. We've met another character that is actually known to be a Romulan
Mhm.
earlier on the space station. So with all of that in mind, where do you guys see, or mostly where does Teketh fit into? Do you think fits into the storyline currently? What do you see being what's going on there? Like I have ideas, but what do you see going on?
I unfortunately Teketh is also my least fleshed out character.
Sure.
So I don't have solid answers between that and not. I'm out of my depth both in the lore and as an espionage character because I am not good at subterfuge. So Teketh is the hardest character for me to play because I don't do subtle well.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been a role playing challenge for me. Um, the way I envisioned him, I think, was primarily trying to steal those AI secrets
Mm-hmm.
and take them back, and then whatever else he can pick up along the way, and or maybe, um, you know, slightly disgruntled ex Maquis that he can turn to his side.
I would
Yeah.
love to see him try.
Yeah.
Who knows? He may actually succeed. Depends which way the is most interesting.
Right.
Right. Um, as I said, we've already dealt with at least one potentially, I don't know, allied to Teketh kind of character in I don't remember the character's name off the top of my head. I don't have my notes in front of me. But the Romulan aboard the starbase.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some Romulan stuff going on. I absolutely love the Romulans. They're probably my favorite of the otherworldly races. Like everyone loves Klingons, and they're great. I love Klingons too. They're just basically a frat boy with frat boys with lasers. Um, and they're fun to play. I enjoy playing them. I like playing Klingons as a character too. They're fun to play. They're over the top. But
Commander
Romulans,
Tasha Ray.
yes. Um, that's not how I pronounced it, but that's pretty close.
Oh, all right. Toshare?
I think so.
Something like that. Yeah.
If I can find her name in
It's
my
in
notes,
here
I
somewhere.
know what it is. But
You can't mark syllable emphasis with English.
yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know. Oh, here we go. Narendra Station. I've got Admiral April Herbert, General Kargan, Commander Nira, Lieutenant Oleg, civilian Dr. Helena Talafir, which I don't know if you guys have actually encountered her yet, and Sub Commander Toshari.
Toshari.
TO'SHA''RI. Toshari. Anyways, we've encountered her, and there has been some chicanery there as far as Ambrose has been able to tell. Because she and Ambrose had a moment,
Mm-hmm.
mostly one that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but was there to help add some intrigue to the story in that moment. So that's something we want to explore more in the future for sure. I do, anyways, and I think Do you see Teketh ever getting caught? Like, where does that storyline end up? Where does that story end for you? Where does that character end for you?
I do want to see him get caught. I want to see him get caught, or at the very least have a close encounter and try and talk his way out of it. I think ideally I'd like to see both of those.
Okay. Now,
I
like,
just don't want my telepath to be the one to catch him, because it was that
Right.
moment in the bar that I was like, oh crap, I can spoil my own fun.
right. It's one of those things that
Oh.
just never comes on camera. Why didn't Troy figure that out?
Right.
The Romulans are good at suppressing their,
They
you
are.
know,
As we saw.
being able to be mind read.
Yeah.
And also Ambrose is a empath at the very
Mhm.
least. But I think it could be interesting if Eva actually catches on, because obviously you have to use Eva's systems to do any sort of
Right.
communication or espionage. So it would be interesting if Eva was just like, hey, this is weird, and just brings it up like it's inconsequential piece of information that starts a trail of breadcrumbs
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
lead to an
That could be a really
investigation.
fun Tong storyline, actually,
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
to get
Yeah.
Tong and then move it up to the next person, then up to the next person, then eventually gets up to Ambrose and Hage, and like, what the fuck?
Well,
A question that I have that though, like, so we've seen characters who are obviously subverting the main characters, right? We've seen Quark. Quark
Mhm.
regularly subverts the main story characters, and gets away with it every time. Is that something you want? Is that the way you see the character playing? Like, they're not going to get this reference, but more of a Jonas kind of character, where it's, you're doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, or are you flat out like, no, this guy is going to get hung at some point? Like,
Yeah, no,
treason
he
is treason.
is he's doing what he thinks is the right thing. He's doing the
Sure.
right thing for the Romulan Empire.
Okay.
I just want to say I would love it if Silva was also involved in catching on to him.
I agree, especially if we're excuse me, if we're going to run with the idea that Teketh is using Silva.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
I would love it if that comes back to bite him in the butt,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because I don't want to see Silva kicked out of Starfleet for helping.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No,
but
when we talked about it, we talked about it a little bit in the chat. My thought for the Teketh Silva relationship is not an overt thing. Like, he's not going to make it he's not going to pull her aside and be like, hey, I'm a spy, you're going to help me. It's going to be very subtle. It's like I envision it like the Garrick Bashir relationship, except Garrick is actually an evil spy.
Right.
sure. I also don't just want her to be a dupe either, though. So
Okay.
I'm saying, like, I'd like her to be.
Oh, yeah.
involved. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I do like the idea though of having to see Silva understanding the betrayal, and
Oh,
Mhm.
definitely.
and not just coming to the realization of like, oh, I got to get that son of a bitch, but like, I can't believe this is real.
Mhm.
I can't believe I was played like this, and then go after pursuing it further. I think that would be a fun thing to do,
And I'd like to
because
tie that.
she is young and she is somewhat naive.
Mhm. I'd like to tie that back into the feelings that she had expressed in that first conversation with Teketh of feeling abandoned by Starfleet, and that's why she went to the Maquis. And I'd like to play on that.
Yeah. Dead State Cora in the chat just the hashtag greater good. Absolutely. So yeah, I agree with that. I think that'll be a fun thing to play out. I don't know how long we're gonna be able to keep that a secret, but
Yeah.
probably at least to the majority of the Klingon war. Yeah, I would think.
Yeah.
To see how that plays out.
One thing that might be fun long term is if after he gets captured, what if he's kept on the brig because of our ship, and that way people can still talk to him while he's in prison.
Hmm.
We
Okay.
can find reasons to keep him there.
I think for sure you're going to see when that happens. I think that can create some nice tension between the Romulans and the Federation too. Like,
Mhm.
obviously you're not going to send this person back home. They've committed crimes against the Federation. There's some problems here. I think that could be a lot of fun. So
Mhm.
it reminds me I need to watch Hot Fuzz again. That was one of the in the chat. I do love that the greater good. That's where the greater good thing comes from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I love that. Anyway, let's talk about we've covered most of the main characters. Do you guys have any other characters that you want to bring up as far as what we want to talk about? Like obviously I'd want to see more with Kaz and all that stuff. Let's talk
Okay.
about Koba and Kostra.
Sure,
Obviously two completely different characters.
sure.
Like I actually like how you distinguish them. In fact, we're talking about with Tong Kostra being a possible pseudo mentor character, which I think is hilarious because that character does to me when I see the image, all I think is like Guy Fieri, and I don't want to learn anything from that guy. So, um, I think it's really funny. I like him. I like him as a chief engineer. What do you think? Where do you see that character going? Like, what do you want to do with that character? You haven't done much with him so far. We haven't seen the chief engineer very often.
So I don't actually see him having an arc.
Okay.
Like I he is strictly puts the supporting in the supporting characters.
Okay.
Uh,
Much like an Underwire Brawl, he's just there for support.
the reason I wanted to play the chief engineer in the first place is because I knew that the chief engineer was going to end up getting sidelined by the fact that my main characters, both of them, have an engineering
Sure.
focus.
Mhm.
So I figured, so that's why I wanted to be the chief engineer, so that way I wasn't sidelining any of you. I would be sidelining myself. So
Gotcha.
my point is, I'm okay with him getting sidelined because of that. And I do love him interacting with Tong, and I definitely want to help build up Tong's storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, boy, I'd be hard pressed to think of a good arc for him of what he's going to go through, because
Right.
I'm just thinking about him in terms of everybody else.
So his character development is basically I'm on screen. You know,
He's there to fill the gap if we need a third in command. Somebody to stay
Right.
on the ship while the rest of us go off. I think he's perfect for that.
he's definitely a bit of a hothead too. I like, or at
Mhm.
least a loose cannon, maybe not hothead, but loose cannon. I don't know what you're going to do with that character. I have no idea when that character's on screen what is going to happen next. I know it's going to be not what I expected, but I don't know
Right.
what it's going to be.
I mainly do
Golden
whatever
limousine.
pushes the plot along best. So
Which also brings me to Koba, because Koba has a very similar style, right? Koba is very much I'm going to go do what is not what expected right now. I'm going to go shoot that, or I'm going to bench press that, or
I got the bombs. Oh, you're done.
right.
So
What kind of world do we live in when a man can't get rid of a bomb? Like, so where do you see that going?
So Koba's definitely like a comic relief character. That's how I envision him.
Mhm.
And as far as arc, I don't think he has one. I mean, he might. Especially, I am interested to see what happens with when Mills gets the promotion, because I definitely want to make sure those two complement each other rather than step on each other's toes. So
Right.
I'm willing to move him in whatever direction is best to complement Mills in her new position. So if she ends up,
We were discussing for a little while a slight rivalry between the two characters, weren't we?
A little bit.
Mills and Cobra.
Koba.
Having a little bit of a slight rivalry to see who gets that position.
That's the mirror universe of Koba. It's just Koba with a cobra tattoo on his face. Sorry.
I love it. I do. We are going to do a mirror universe episode at some point, so keep that in mind. I always do them. Love them.
yeah, I mean, I like him having a rivalry, although I think he'd be pretty good natured about it. I don't think it would be like Silva. I could see having like a violent rivalry. I don't see Koba doing it.
Okay.
So ultimately, I think they would end up working things out pretty easily.
Sure. More of a
think
friendly
so.
rivalry than an actual
Yeah,
rivalry.
friendly rivalry.
I actually look forward to seeing a little bit more of that, because I know Ambrose was kind of trying to figure out, or at least it seemed on camera to me, that Ambrose was trying to think of, okay, well, which one of these two characters is best? Which one of these two people is best suited to take over the role? And I know that there has been some questioning on the command structure as to who's going to be next, and I think that seeing that play out a little more in the future could be really interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that.
I would like to see there be more of a rivalry between Koba and Mills, and that split with Ambrose as to the decision of how it's going to go. In my mind, we're still really early in our story.
Yeah.
We've been doing this a long time because unfortunately
Breaks
we don't
and
always make it every week.
Right.
But we're really only. I've been keeping track in my notes. We have played. If I scroll all the way down, we have played 13 games, but I've counted only 8 actual separate narrative episodes.
Correct.
So we're really early.
Yep.
And in my mind, this is why I held off on promoting Mills right after that last mission, because in my mind, that's the point where Ambrose was like, okay, this signifies that she is a contender. I would like to get that moment with Koba where I'm like, he is also a contender, and then we can start the analysis of who is best.
Right.
But so far, Ambrose has only seen Koba be a jackass and
get his arm broken.
and getting his arm nearly ripped off.
Yeah.
But I did like how that last bit was resolved with Ambrose, apologizing to Koba and teaching him something. So I would like to see Koba become more than just comic relief, if that's something you're interested in pursuing.
I am, yeah. I will say the dice don't always agree.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, you have really bad luck with dice, and it's made 2 of your secondary characters somewhat less.
I feel like we all have bad luck on dice.
That's true.
Sometimes,
That's true.
man. Sometimes.
Fantasy Grounds definitely picks days when it's just not on your guys' side.
I actually think the kind of storyline where Koba might excel is if he gets like stranded with people. Like not a planned mission, but I think he'd be really good in an improvisational situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I liked the situation where Koba was when you guys went down to the planet and were dealing with the invisible characters. I liked the way you played Koba during that scene. I thought it was extremely emblematic of what the character was and what he could be. Like, you were comic relief for sure, but it was also like, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. And when the combat started, you didn't make the great rolls, but you made the action of the character was purposeful and intentful. And I liked that a lot. So I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more of that. I think that says a lot about what the character is and can be.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe one thing that can happen is if Orani puts Koba in charge of a mission or two to see how he would fare, because he was in charge of that mission, and that's how he got to excel.
Right.
Well, there was Dasavi, but he was in charge of the tactical side of that mission.
There's certainly going to be opportunities, I think, for everybody to get a chance to have moments to shine. I really want to focus more on giving every character, not every character, but giving characters more opportunity to shine. We've focused a lot on Ambrose throughout the last 8 episodes. And I'm not saying that I want to stop doing that, but I definitely want to give some headroom for other characters to get in there and do some more stuff. As long as we're on the topic of rivalries, though, let's talk about 2 other secondary characters, and that's Silva and Shijin. Both pilots. One's a fighter pilot. The other one is you're an Ex Maquis pilot, right? Yeah, Ex Maquis fighter pilot, right?
A smuggler. Yeah.
Smuggler. Obviously, we don't have fighter craft aboard ship. Mostly because I'm not really. We've talked about this before, but I really don't. Yeah, I don't agree with fighter craft in Star Trek. They don't make a lot of sense. They're just good ways to get good people killed. Not saying we can't use them at some point, but carriers.
Looking forward to that discussion.
Right, carriers in the position that the Europa is in certainly don't make any sense. Having combat capable shuttlecraft, the Arrowwing is a very capable shuttlecraft. Like, it's a runabout on steroids. And runabouts are pretty badass.
We just used it the last episode, and you equated it to a garbage scow.
I don't think I did that. I think somebody else did that.
No, you said it has the maneuverability of a garbage scow.
Oh, did I? I don't remember saying that, but
because I was thinking, yeah, it was a runabout on steroids, and I was trying to perform all kinds of fancy maneuvers, and you're like, no, this is a garbage truck, guys. It's a yacht. It's not going anywhere.
Yacht. Let's see. I don't think I can bring this up. I might be able to bring this up on screen. I'm not sure if I can or not. But so the Arrowwing class integrated runabout captain's yacht. Comms 9, structure 8, sensors 8, engine 7, which is not super maneuverable, but it's not bad, I guess. It's certainly better than the shuttlecraft. Shuttlecraft are only 4, 5, 7. There you go. The Type 9 shuttlecraft is a 7. That one's pretty maneuverable. I don't have stats for the shuttle for combat shuttles. Like I don't have that, but
Well, what do you mean by combat shuttles?
well,
Like peregrines?
the peregrines. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
I don't have the stats for that in front of me. So
Yeah.
But yeah, clearly, I when we talked about it, I wasn't sure. I didn't understand. I think how much that facet of the character was integral to the character's development. Like, it's certainly a thing we can look at doing more of, but especially during combat with like the Klingons, because a Morel class ship is not much bigger than a peregrine. I don't think. There is definitely room for the small craft that are maneuverable. But as far as talking about the rivalry between Silva and Shajin, we have seen it a little bit on screen. How has that played out for you guys? Like, how have you felt that has gone so far?
We've had like one small conversation. I don't
I thought
think
it was
there's
more
really
than that.
much to
I mean,
say about it.
It felt very one-sided to me. Like it seemed like I was trying to stir shit up, and
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
and Shajin was being a professional, and that's really all it came down to.
which is fine, but
Yeah.
it's boring.
Right.
Right.
It's something I would like to see more of, but it requires more shuttle-based stories.
Agreed. Yeah, there has not been much with shuttles.
And I, what I was going for with Shajin was maybe a little integration of say like a Battlestar Galactica, CAG wing leader or whatever they were called in there, but also taking heavy influence from Paris on Voyager towards the end when he had his fancy fighter ship, because it was a fighter craft.
Yeah.
It was not just a runabout, because they had those. It was a distinct solo fighter
The
craft.
Delta was it the Delta
the
wing?
The
is what it
Delta
was?
wing. Yeah, it was a Corvette with weaponry. It was and
I will say that Voyager is pretty much. You talk about you discount all of the original series. I discount pretty much all of Voyager. I hate Voyager. But give me a list of episodes that you want that you're referring to, and I'll take a look at them.
But also, I am really looking forward to the the conversation about fighter craft, because I have a lot to say.
Well,
about
one thing I think we should settle out of character, even if we don't settle it in character yet, is maybe where their spheres of responsibility are, if we want them to be different. Because I definitely feel like we kind of rectified this last session, but before that, it had definitely been an issue where Malini didn't pilot the shuttle because we didn't have much need for more than one shuttle pilot.
Yeah.
So what if we make it so Malini's job is to pilot shuttling, and then Jissa's job is to pilot the Arrow Wing when in combat situations?
Yeah, we could say that.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of how it's written on the sheet currently.
I think so.
But we haven't been doing it that way. Jissa's just been piloting the shuttle whenever it's needed.
Yeah, I think the problem is, and it's a problem that is at least 80% on my side, is that I want Jisa to be something that this game under your admiralship really doesn't allow.
Sure.
So Jisa is not really the character that I
Had hope
intended
for.
her or had hope for her to be. So I don't really see where she fits in, because I don't think there's really any reason to have a dedicated shuttle pilot. It's not interesting. Anybody can pilot a shuttlecraft if you're just going from point A to point B, and there's really no problems. You don't have to worry about fancy maneuvers.
Sure.
You're literally just a taxi driver. You don't
Right.
really need that narratively, and anybody can do it.
Right.
They're not that hard to pilot.
I only like them really. I like them because I like secondary characters, but I like the characters as shuttle pilots. They don't have to be, but I like them as shuttle pilots because you end up with that fish out of water moment where you've got the character who is on an away team mission, who is a shuttle pilot, who is now doing something else. Again, though, you're right. You don't need them. They're not necessary. I like that dynamic.
But I can't think of any main character or any main side character, any reoccurring side character that was just a shuttle pilot. Anytime we see somebody who is just a shuttle pilot, they either get to where they're going or go back, or get to where they're going and die immediately. Otherwise, they have one of the
Yes.
main characters piloting the shuttle, and they do it just fine because it's
Right.
literally the first thing you learn in Star Trek Academy. Nog can pilot a shuttlecraft like 2 weeks into
Right.
his academy stay. So it's you don't
One of the
really
things that-
need a shuttle
one of the-
pilot.
No, but one of the things that makes it interesting, and again, this is it's not a necessary story element, and we don't need it, but it's one of the ones I kind of like. The command department is pretty much everyone's been a shuttle pilot at some point. Riker started as a shuttle pilot. Geordi was a shuttle pilot for a while. Even Picard did shuttle piloting for a while. So it's one of those things where these characters should be the mentality for these characters, I think, should be they're here now, but where are they going to go to? Again, you're right that is not a necessary storyline, but it is a potential storyline for them. So I don't disagree with you on any particular point. I'm just.
But at the same time, I really enjoy shuttlecraft based episodes because they kind of do have that sort of submarine type feel to them, or when a shuttlecraft crashes and as you said, people are forced sort of out of their fields of expertise.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I think part of the issue might be that we haven't had much in terms of space combat at all.
Yes. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I would love to see more ship combat.
The only issue I have with, like, again, mechanically speaking, the reason I'm not really keen on fighter craft, I mean, one, there really aren't any rules for fighter craft. They just operate like normal starships, and I'm not sure how that would really play out, because what happens on screen and what the rules allow for, because shuttlecraft in the show, or fighters in the show, basically last about like 4 seconds on screen before they are just popped off in mass.
Well, the problem with space combat in Star Trek is that
it's wildly narrative.
It's wildly narrative, and the strength of ships varies wildly on the narrative. We've seen peregrines get blasted out of the sky by a Galler class, but we've seen runabouts, which have significantly less shield and armor, survive multiple hits.
Right. Well, yeah, especially when there's main characters on them.
Yeah. So their power is dictated by plot. So the argument that peregrines are just going to get blown out of the sky with one hit is facetious, because it's dictated by plot.
It's dictated by narrative. The problem that you run into is, if you take, mechanically speaking, if you take the Arrow Wing and the Europa, the only way to combat that, the only way to have that be an interesting encounter will slow combat down to the point of it being a D&D combat. Because now you're talking about a lot more actions going on between multiple ships.
Well, see what my idea was, and I don't know if I ever expressed it properly, was that I thought it would be interesting to have a full wing of peregrines that are really under the command of Jisa. There are like 6 to 12 of these things, but they count as one entity when it comes to a combat turn. So they can take damage, and that would mean, just as we've done with red shirts, this entity, this stat block has taken some damage. That means we no longer have 12 peregrines in the wing. We only have 10 now, and they only get one action, but it's a coordinated strike. Or something like
still stands in that's twice as many actions, because the Europa is still in that situation.
Yeah, it's a matter of I'm up for the idea of coming up with a set of cohesive rules. There aren't any currently, but a set of cohesive rules that would keep combat swift. Because one thing I hate about a lot of RPGs is that combat breaks down into just slogs, and I don't like sloggy combat. I like it for things like we talked about earlier. We were off camera. We were talking about XCOM. I like it in XCOM. I like that kind of tactical thing. But for role playing, I think pacing is more important than the minutia of tactical combat. I think it's important, but I think the narrative is more important.
Well,
we could come up with a way to do that,
narrative combat with an assumption that we come out on top. And we could still have roles in some situations, but we don't need to go okay, everybody on the bridge gets an action, and then everybody in each of the shuttlecrafts gets an action, and then
Right.
each of the enemy ships gets an action. I mean, we can kind of settle these things narratively and just have it be an interactive, a cooperative storytelling moment,
Right.
where
Which we have done largely so far.
Hmm.
I mean, I would like to do actual like spaceship combat at some point.
Sure.
I like the spaceship combat in this system. And as far as I totally get some of the issues. My take on the shuttles in this system is they're not very powerful. Your rolls are not going to you are very unlikely to succeed just because their stats are uniformly terrible. Um, they're not going to blow up too easily though, because this system very much is weighted in terms of ships not exploding. You have to take even with a shuttlecraft, you need to take two
Breaches.
breaches in each system before the ship is destroyed.
Yeah.
So it's going to get damaged and it's going to do it, but it's a shuttle. It doesn't really matter in the long term.
Right. Well, and that's also because we're assuming, again, narratively speaking, not narratively, I'm sorry, mechanically speaking, you're looking at, if you're going to be doing the role playing aboard a shuttlecraft, it's going to be the main crew, right? It's going to be the main cast.
Yeah.
If we're doing a wing of peregrines, I like the idea of, or a wing of shuttlecraft or whatever it happens to be. I spend two momentum, and that peregrine over there takes the hit and it's blown up. Essentially being more of like almost like an ablative stat. It's something to think about. I can certainly come up with some ideas and way to work it in. There are going to be some times in combat where I don't know how I want the combat to go. So having some more of the mechanical combat is going to be interesting. But you're right. So far we have done a lot of narrative Starship combat. The little bit of Starship combat we've done has been largely narrative.
As far as turn economy, we could just do it that everybody gets one turn regardless of what ship you're in.
Yeah.
That's kind of my read of the rules as it is.
Isn't that how it
So that's
works?
how we've been doing.
That's pretty much
Right,
how we've been doing it.
But yeah, that's how it's supposed to be read. But that wouldn't increase the amount of actions because everybody would still just be getting one turn regardless what ship you're in.
Right.
Right.
So either I as Jack could have Jisa do something or have Ambrose do something.
Right.
Right.
Okay, I
not
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll come up with some stuff. I'll throw together some house rules to see what we can do. And Jack, if you got ideas, feel free to throw them out, and we'll discuss it and figure it out. Like, we've got some time. I do have some Starship combat I want coming up, but clearly Europa currently does not have a fighter wing, and it may be something that we acquire short term from the starbase, or even just the Arrow wing and a couple of shuttles go out, and shuttles don't matter.
I mean, we've seen
Voyager
them...
had like 6 shuttles and went through like 35 of them in a series.
Yes, it is. They can fabricate shuttles super quickly with industrial replicators. It's not a problem. But I've always been in the camp that if a player has something interesting they want to do, you shouldn't not allow them to do it because there's no rules for it.
I agree. The reason I haven't allowed it so far is because one, I wasn't really sure what you wanted to get from it. I don't think that was very clear to me.
And I'm not saying that's what you're doing. That's just
sure. And two, like I said, looking back at Next Gen and the majority of Deep Space Nine until you get into the later seasons, shuttlecraft or fightercraft aren't a thing
because they weren't needed.
Again, it comes down to the technology of the universe. It doesn't seem to really make a whole lot of sense to have them. They do make sense in larger combat. It's like, to some extent, it's more targets. And, even if it just carries one torpedo, that's one more torpedo.
The Peregrines can carry 4 standard complement.
Right, I'm just saying
12.
Right, I'm just saying again, you're looking at
I've done a lot of
technology
research on
standpoint,
Peregrines.
right? Yeah. There's a great video that Brian shared that I watched all the way through that pretty much hits all the points I have. They're not the end of the world, but they're definitely not the Battlestar Galactica style where...
See, when I watch that video, I think the pros outweigh the cons.
We have different takeaways.
Yeah.
But again, since we're in a war zone with the Klingons at the moment, I can certainly see there being a call for them, and at least in the short term, to get that storyline going. It may not be a permanent storyline, but I can certainly justify doing it and seeing it and I think it would be a fun moment on camera, several moments on camera. I
Okay.
just
I
want to
don't
make sure
wanna-
that we're doing it in a way that makes sense and plays out, so that everyone is still getting their moment in the sun
Mhm.
without making it so that I have to, in order to have mechanical competition with the ships and make the combats interesting and paced well, that you're not fighting two Vorcha classes in order to make the statistics work out. You know what I mean?
Mm.
If every player in the game has hero points and can get advantage in every roll, and they have sneak attack, and all the characters have sneak attack, then the cockatrice is far less important than it used to be. It's far less a threat than it used to be. So it's about balancing the encounter, and I want to make sure that when we're balancing the encounter, when I'm creating the encounter, that I'm balancing it for double the amount of fire, weapons firing, and two ships being attacked now, and so, because when I add another ship, I'm adding twice as many breaches that have to be not twice as many, but more breaches that have to happen, and more everything else in order to maintain the narrative pressure. It makes sense if we're doing group combats, like you're fighting 2 or 3 Morels or Cohorts or whatever. But if it's a one-on-one encounter, it really it becomes very one-sided, mechanically speaking, when you guys have that advantage. So it's a thing to think about.
It's worth noting it's pretty one-sided as it is. Like, it takes 30 breaches to destroy a ship.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
like,
I feel like it's already both mechanically, and I've only delved into the mechanics very little, but also narratively, even based on the shows, that it's heavily weighted towards the good guys succeeding. And that doesn't necessarily mean blowing up the other ship, because it rarely comes to that outside of full-on war. It's usually you do enough damage, you take down the shields, and one of you runs away. But
there's the thing that you have to remember, though, is, again, the narrative tension, right? So if you've got 2 ships, that's way less likely that a morale is going to decloak at all. If they know that they attack the Europa and you're now fighting 2 ships, not one, or within one round you're fighting 2 ships, not one, that is...
Well, they shouldn't know that they're fighting multiple ships at a time until they decloak and we scramble our Peregrine wing. Right. We look like one ship, and then they get... And again,
reputations are built.
Like, sure.
So, like, the Enterprise is a known ship.
The thing is, we have extended. You built the Europa to have extended cargo bays and
extended shuttle bays. Yeah,
sure. What is the point of that if we don't use all that shuttle space for interesting shuttles? When you could have more when I think there are more interesting things you can buy on the ship.
Sure.
And as far as keeping up narrative pacing, I agree. If it's just the Europa and the Arrow Wing, you can't really destroy one of them, or it's going to be a problem. You're going to lose a main character, and it's going to be a whole thing. But if we scramble a Peregrine wing, and we're popping off Peregrines here and there, there's 1 to 4 people in all of those ships. You blow up one of those ships, people are dying. It should be narratively tense.
Theoretically, yeah. Now, again, I was saying I'm not opposed to the idea of doing it. I just need to come up with a way that's going to make it keep that narrative tension. So,
I mean, I have an idea for logistically how we can make it happen. What if the space station needs some runabouts? We have runabouts, and they have some spare fighters. So we trade our runabouts, trade a couple runabouts for a couple fighters, maybe 4.
Getting a fighter wing on the ship is not. I mean, it wouldn't be complicated. Like, he's right. The ship does have the extended shuttle base. I did that mostly because the mentality of why that attribute is there is it's space on the ship. This is a ship that doesn't have as many people on it. It's way less staffed. We can go ahead and take out some of the rooms and put some shuttle bays in. That's literally the only reason it's there. It's just take up space on the ship. And I added more shuttlecraft. Like, you have a wider selection of shuttlecraft.
Yeah, but they're all pointless shuttlecrafts.
Sure. Again, though, that's one of those things where the ship is, you don't start out with the baddest ass ship on the planet. Like, even the Enterprise upgrades over time.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of the mentality of, like, you can do more with the ship over time. And if one of the things the group wants to do is add a Peregrine wing, at least temporarily, I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea. It's something we can certainly do. I just want to make sure that when we do it, if we do it, it fits both narratively in story and keeps the combat narratively interesting. Those are my only real concerns with it as far as mechanics go. Like, I don't. I'm not invested enough in the idea of shuttlecraft being useless things that shouldn't exist. Not shuttlecraft, but fighters being useless things that shouldn't exist in Star Trek. I'm not invested enough in that story in that fight to be like, no, never. My foot is down. That's the end of the world. But um, when I starting out the game, like it was not a mentality I had because it's not a thing that I think Star Trek really highlights in any way. But it can be interesting.
And I
But
don't
that's
I
the
don't
thing-
want to come on too strong. We don't need to shoehorn it in there if it doesn't work. I just think if it
Sure.
doesn't work, Shajin doesn't work.
Sure,
so
sure.
I'd
Right.
have to, I'd have to make a different character or really play around with Jisa. So
Right.
it
And it's one of those things too. Like
I'm not saying ultimatum, but I think it really comes down to either scrapping Jisa or getting a
Right.
Peregrine wing, and that's
I'm
not
actually-
an ultimatum. I'm fine
Right.
either way.
I think the idea of having the wing and then scrapping Jisa could be interesting. Like we get the fighter wing, we do the during the Klingon War, and when the war is over, assuming that it's over, because I've written no end to it at the moment. While that is going on, it could be an interesting story element, and when it's over, maybe that's when Shajin moves on, or Shajin, whatever, Jisa, Shajin, yeah.
Yeah. Jisa
moves on with the wing and goes on somewhere else, and it gives you an opportunity to both have to gotten her story played and then to move either up in the ranks with her character or to move on and make a new character. So I think it's an option.
Yeah.
So
One other food for thought. I did give Silva helm operations. So one other thing we could do if we didn't want to go in the direction of the shuttles is Jisa could just take the primary on shuttlecraft overall, including just all shuttle missions, and then we can just have Silva bouncing between backup helm, backup shuttle, whatever's necessary at the time.
well, with Fox being off the ship at the moment, Silva probably is going to be moving up to that position. So
That's why I took it. I figured
Right.
that might be necessary. So
I just don't want to relegate Jisa to just being a chauffeur.
Sure.
Basically, I'd rather her,
Right.
just go off and like be transferred to the station as their Peregrine wing to defend the station sort of
Right.
situation. If we're not going to use her, I hate it because I actually put a lot into that character. I think she's really one of my favorite characters of my side characters, and we really haven't had a moment for her to shine too much, and I would like to play her more, but if
Right.
it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But I don't want to have a character that I really like, that I put a lot into, just be a chauffeur. So if we're not going to use her the way
Right.
that she's intended, we can write her off screen, and I'll make something else.
Right. Well, like I said, I think the idea could be an interesting role playing moment. It could be some interesting storyline, combat heavy episodes, to have a Peregrine's nest kind of deal. It's certainly something I can look into and see what I can do with it. And if I can't come up with anything with it, I'll let you know, and we'll figure out an exit for the character. But the more I think about it, the more I like the idea of going back to the station and swapping out some of your shuttlecraft for a fighter wing. We were in a combat zone, and there are only so many ships out here. So I think I've only got like 4 ships in the entire 4 Federation like starships in the sector. So thing to think about. I can definitely work with that. I think that's covered basically everybody except. I don't know if there's a lot for Define to talk about at the moment. O'Connor, I don't know how much you got for that.
Not really. I'm still trying to feel her out and figure out what I want to do with her. She's still developing.
Yeah, we've got Varen, which I don't think that character's never come up. I don't think, or barely come up, right?
Yeah, she was in the background of one science briefing. I think she had one line, I think, in it. That was it.
What do you envision for that character? Like,
really, I was thinking it would be interesting to explore lost cultures, have a sort of Picard on Ryza sort of moment when he
Sure.
meets Vash for the first
Mm.
time or whatnot, or a sort of Vulcan Indiana Jones thing going on.
So really, she should have been on the station.
Probably,
Mm.
yeah. Because her whole thing is she's xenoanthropologist and archaeologist, and I figured since this is more or less a science ship that we
Mhm.
may come up with that kind of, we may find that kind of stuff. I figured it would be she would be one of the people to come to research unknown cultures, whether they be lost cultures where we show up to a planet that's full of ruins, or pre-warp culture, to go in as a undercover
Mhm.
anthropologist, like in that one episode of
Next Gen.
Enterprise.
Enterprise,
Or I mean, I think every season has a hey, let's go and hang out with these
Right.
pre-warp people. We just really haven't had her moment to come up, and it does come down to exploring culture and exploring the history of unknown space cultures.
So here's the only question I have with that. Like, I like the idea. Obviously, I clearly like the idea, but with Ambrose being largely involved in a lot of that early context, like this, so for example, the station. Obviously, the station was a better place for Ambrose to be than her because potential threats. Do you see a time when she will be able to shine, when you can set Ambrose aside and play her, or do you think it's largely going to be one of those things where Ambrose is probably going to be the more common? I mean, clearly he's the main character, your main character, but since you're playing both characters, you would have to set Ambrose aside in order to play her.
What about when Ambrose gets promoted? She might come more into play then.
That's true.
Perhaps, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's kind of something I've struggled with how this game is run, because I can see Ambrose being in pretty much every situation.
Sure.
Right.
I mean, he's the first officer. He can handle himself in any situation. But I also don't see any reason why I couldn't have multiple characters in the same space, as long as they don't really need to interact with each other all that much.
Sure.
I could easily see. While Ambrose was on the station doing security stuff, Ren could have been helping out
O'Connor.
With collection, and there were moments when those two parties were split. It wasn't until after the whole murderous robot rampage that those two parties came back together.
Right.
So even though they're in the same overall narrative location, they can still split up and do their own things.
Absolutely, I agree. It's a thing to think about. Just, I think part of the reason we haven't had her come up is I forgot she was there.
Sure.
And I don't make the away teams. You guys do.
Yeah.
Well, and if we're gonna have those moments where Hage takes Dasavi out to lead a team and leaves Ambrose on the ship, that opens up opportunities for Vren as well.
Yeah. And obviously, or honestly, I will say that I did kind of struggle with making secondary characters because it is so alien to how it's a very different game system to what I'm used to playing. And when I think of NPCs, for my games, I think of them more in this fashion, that they are support characters that are in the background, kind of doing their own things until they need to be interacted with, and they're kind of really specialized in what they do. And I think everybody else had so many other great characters and so many other positions filled that I was kind of scrambling to find positions on the ship that I could fill. I think Tong really is the only one that I feel really strongly has a concrete place on the crew and on the ship. Everybody else, I was kind of like, well, I need to come up with 3 to 4 more supporting characters, and I don't know, a hologram and an anthropologist and a fighter pilot. That would be cool. But there's really no precedence for any of my other three characters, 4 if we include Renewal. So
yeah, like I said,
I've put, as I said before, I put way more thought into Ambrose because he's my main character than I have side characters. They're kind of there if we need them, and if we do want to write them in to be more prominent, like we kind of have with Tong, that would be cool. But
again, the
I'm
idea
fine with
behind
that.
having these characters is like, one, Star Trek, the game is kind of designed to have characters that you sort of like. There's a mechanic for just making a character on the fly and having this other character fill in the scene. I have found that never gets used in any of the games I've run, and even the games that Brian, when you were running it, like I don't. Well, why I don't know if it was even a rule you were using, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't feel natural to me. So I wanted the idea of having you guys create them ahead of time so they were there. And if they don't get used, they don't get used. But the idea of having that depth on the ship is really what I was going for. So, I mean, if you never use Vren, it's fine. It doesn't bother me. But I think it could be an interesting character to have come up because it's another character for the crew to interact with, to have another perspective on what's going on and have more depth on the characters, more depth on the ship. That's really all I'm into it about. As far as on the ship, we've got family written down on our sheet, but I don't remember how many of these are on the ship and how many of them are not. I probably should actually mark that in. But we've got Jorad's wife, Jorad's children, Yezebeth's father, who I know is not on the ship.
Yeah, none
The
of my
Fiends.
family are on the ship.
Okay.
Yeah.
I assume none of the Fiends are on there. The Savis are not on there.
Dasavis were originally written to be on there, and then we had an in-character, on-camera discussion with Dasavi and Jorad, where Jorad talked about, "Oh, you must miss your family." I'm like, "All right, well, I guess my family's not in the ship."
I'm
Fair enough.
sorry.
No, it's okay. Totally okay. I rewrote some shit. I made it work. It's all good.
Do I remember us having tentative plans to bring your
Mm.
daughter on the ship at some point?
Yeah, my oldest, because my oldest is in academy.
Yeah. I
So that
hope
a storyline you like to actually see happen is where the characters come aboard.
We could. I don't see any reason for Dasavi's youngest or her husband to come aboard the ship. But we could do a scene. I think Brian, you had talked about maybe wanting to play her oldest at one point,
Yeah, I still do.
which could be fun.
Once I get a
Um,
free character slot
Yeah.
through
So we
Beans.
could have. I'm totally down with that. We could also do something where we have. Oh, my brain is just coming up
Like a
video
Worf's parents
conferencing.
come to visit
Yep,
kind of deal.
Right. We'll have a Zoom chat with,
Yeah,
with the
a Zoom
families.
chat.
I mean, it is a Starfleet ship. The senior officers can
Yeah.
have family aboard if you guys chose to. We sort of discussed that earlier on, and I think we sort of decided that they weren't aboard.
Mhm.
But I mean, there's plenty of rooms. It's a big ship with nobody on it. So yeah, okay. I just wanted to say, like, I know these are the characters that we have. Do we are? I don't know if Ambrose has any family. I do have your character history, but I have to go back and reread it.
So
Go
I think
ahead.
the only other of my characters I can think of that has family is Mills has a twin brother who is stationed
Sam-
somewhere else.
Sam Mills, twin brother, male human. Don't have any information for that.
So this actually reminds me there was something I wanted to circle back around.
Sure.
We mentioned Delphine earlier, and one thing I was interested in exploring with her was the idea that that she's got a 4-person family, and that she's trying to find a third wheel on a couple. And I thought we had an interesting start between her and Jissa. I don't know if you were still interested in exploring that.
Yeah.
But if that does proceed, I would love for Tetax, Delphine's husband, to come on the ship, and like us to have that kind of scene. What do you think of this person? Would they make a good addition to the family? Or so that's. And I would also like to see Yezebeth's father at some point, but I would want that to be after the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't see Jorad's family coming in. If anything, I think Jorad's family is more interesting if they come after he's bit the bucket.
Yeah, I was gonna say we should.
I
at the very
absolutely
least,
have.
we should see Jorad's
I have every
family
intention
after.
of his wife coming aboard ship at some point after.
Yeah.
I think that'd be very interesting. So
I think that's a good idea. Oh, one other thing I wanted to bring up. I had an idea. I know I mentioned Jorad having a retirement house on a lake. I would love to see that make an appearance as a hologram at some time where Jorad and somebody else sits around the lake because then once he dies, I want Yezebeth to want to go return to that hologram program to the lake she's never going to see.
Right.
Okay.
Bring out the gun there. I can't remember the name of the thing right now, but sorry. The Pavlov's gun.
Chekhov's.
No.
Chekhov's gun.
Chekhov's
That's the one.
Yeah.
Chekhov's gun. Yeah, the Star Trek guy. Chekhov. Yeah.
As opposed to Sulu's sword.
Right.
Nuclear whistles.
The nuclear vessels in Alameda. That's what I said. All right, so that's basically we've covered most every character, unless you guys have another one you guys want to talk about. Obviously, we didn't talk about any of John's characters. There's a lot of things I want to see with those, but I'd like to talk with John about them.
Well, on the matter of family, I have written in Ambrose does have a father in the diplomatic corps, but that's really not come up. I would like to do some more, and this would probably start more off screen with our log entries or letters to home sort of situation. I would like to do one of those. I don't think I've really had a good narrative position to do one of those, and I think every time I'm getting ready to do one of those, scheduling comes up and things fall apart, narrative falls apart, motivation falls apart. But I would like there to be, I would like Ambrose's father to come into the picture at some point. And I did originally write in that he had a significant other, a girlfriend of sorts on Bejor, but there was already so much stuff happening with our opening 2 to 3 episodes or however long we were on DS9 and Bejor that I didn't want to shoehorn her in. But I do think it would be interesting that she does have somebody. He does have somebody back home that he cares about, because I don't want Ambrose to just be that old lone wolf PTSD war veteran that doesn't have anybody.
Right. I like the idea, and hear me out on this one. After Hage is gone and we have some moments with Yezebeth, I think it might not necessarily be a bad idea, narratively speaking, to have the Europa go back to Bejor. Try to kind of like, that's where the Europa started. That's where all of this narration started, all the storyline started. We go back to there to kind of reground ourselves as a crew, as a ship, and everything else, and that could give Ambrose an opportunity to see the family, have the diplomatic corps stuff. Because you did actually reference your father to, I think, the first minister or the second minister at one point in a conversation, and how they were, because we had talked about how you were being so diplomatic in that moment. And it would also give a chance for like Brian, you were talking about, like, to have that as Yezebeth kind of coming to terms with it in a safe environment. Like, she's coming to terms with the fact that now she has all of Hage's memories and all sorts of things, and it gives us a little more downtime that's in a non-threatening area to explore some of these ideas.
Well, I like the idea of her coming to terms with it in a non-safe environment, but
there would clearly be some non-safe environment as well. But.
Sure. But I do like the idea of, I know I mentioned this, that I thought that the Trill authority, the joining
Symbiosis Commission,
would have a problem with that, and I think that's a perfect opportunity for them to come aboard and try and
to deal with it. I think that could be really fun, and I like the stories on Bejor. Like, I really, if I hadn't set this in the Shackleton Expanse, this would have been around Bejor, but I kind of wanted to have our own area to explore and do what I want with, at least for a while. I'm really waiting for the book. I thought the book was going to come out sooner. That was my bad for thinking the Shackleton Expanse book was going to come out sooner than it is. I misunderstood when I did an interview with Jim. I misunderstood what he said, and of course, I didn't go back and listen to the interview very clearly, so that's on me. But that book is coming out, and I want to explore some of that idea.
We can pop between the two. I've got no problem with
that. The ship is the story, right? So the ship will go where the story really is. And if I run out of stories in the Expanse, which I don't know how I would, but if I run out of stories in the Expanse, or if I feel like I've got a good story for taking it back, unfortunately, the only real issue with that is if you look at the map, and this is where it doesn't make sense. Shackleton Expanse is way over here, and DS9 is way over here.
It's like a 4-month journey.
It's like a 4-month journey. It's not a short trip.
The map is not canon.
Right. We're
It's-
going this
it's-
way. I don't know.
But,
beta
but even if you
canon,
don't look
yes.
at even if you don't look at the map, the
It's beta
distance
quadrant, alpha
between
quadrant.
the distance between Bajor and Earth has been stated, and the distance between Earth and where the Shackleton expanse is at the end of the Klingon Empire has been expanded, and it is
Right.
like a 4-month journey if you put it together.
It's a
just
huge amount of
using-
time.
yeah.
Again, though,
The map is pretty
narratively
accurate
speaking,
for it being non-canon.
yeah. Again, though, narrative, narrative speed and all that stuff. The Enterprise goes places that it doesn't make any sense. But I wouldn't have the ship going back and forth like this week we're in Bajor, this week we're over here. It would be, and we're going to Bajor to deal with this thing, or we're going to the Cardassian Empire to deal with these storylines, and then we go back over here to deal with these storylines, because the fleet that you're part of actually covers, if you look at the way it's dispersed from the other, there's some maps out there for that too, but it disperses all the way through the Shackleton Expanse, up along part of the Romulan border, and then on all the way around to the Cardassian border. It is a huge fleet, and it's just there's sector commands and all that other stuff. So it's basically
I would
the
love to
southern
see
fleet.
more Cardassians, because my favorite antagonist alien group are the Cardassians.
I love the Cardassians as well. I use them as an antagonist in my Lexington campaign. So I kind of wanted to get away. For me, narratively speaking, I wanted to kind of move into the Romulans and Klingons, because I never use Romulans or Klingons in my games, because they're the old enemy, and now the Cardassians are the new enemy, and it's always good to hate Nazis. So
I like that you're doing something different than Cardassians. It seems like Cardassians are very popular as a role-playing game antagonist, in my experience.
well, because it's easy to hate Nazis, and they're basically just Nazis.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very easy to hate Nazis. Everyone loves Klingons now. They don't want the Klingons to be the bad guys anymore. Well, everyone's kind of afraid of the Romulans for good reason. If you read the Way of Dira book from the old, the Last Unicorn Games stuff, the Romulans are way more advanced. Not way more advanced, but they're significantly more advanced than we see on screen a lot of times from some of the sub-canon stuff.
Yeah.
I
good.
like them as a villain. I want them as a villain. That is coming at some point in this campaign.
Cool.
I would love to explore other races that haven't been fully fleshed out. Most notably, the Breen and the Tholians. I love Breen and Tholians, but they have so little screen time.
Yeah, and they're both unfortunately not in our region.
True. Yeah.
But
Well,
the Tholians, I could certainly do some stuff with Tholians. Like, I would love to have some more on-screen time with Tholians. The Breen, I think that DS9 kind of...
They showed up for a few episodes at the very end of the last season.
yeah, and
They
they were
weren't
kind of
really
like...
fleshed out.
Yeah, they came in as kind of a tacked-on thing, and it kind of soured the flavor to me.
They were kind of Deus Ex Machina sort of situation. We
So
needed to up the escalation, and we ran out of other ideas. So let's just throw the Breen in. They have a super weapon that's stops.
So I've
everything.
kind of been turned off to the Breen for that reason, but there's certainly some things that could be done with it. I actually want to do some more with the Orion Syndicate.
Yeah.
All of them could have colonies in this sector. It looks like it's not possible for the Federation colonizes everywhere. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't either.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely things that we could do with it. And again, like I said, if I've got storylines that take the ship back to, the Alpha Quadrant to do things out there, there will be a series of adventures that happen out there, and then we'll come back or whatever. Like, I need the Europa, the Admiralty is like, I need the Europa to go out here to do these 8 or 9 things, because it's a ship equipped for these kind of things. You are a science vessel, a very, very powerful science vessel. Go do these things, and then when you're done with that, go back over there and do those things. There's always room for moving the ship around wherever we want it. I'm not concerned about that. Like I said though, I like the Klingons as an antagonist race for a little while. I like them as allies as well, so I want to get back to that at some point. I don't know what we're gonna do with the Klingons right now. I just I'm running the storyline that I'm running comes from, or at least I should say, the seeds of the idea come from a novel that I've actually never read, but I've read the wiki for several times. And I like the idea of coming back and visiting the end of the Duras line, essentially. What has Toral Duras been doing, or Toral of Duras been doing all this time? And it actually fits in very much with kind of a mirror of the storyline you were running, Brian, with I want to say Kurgan, but that is not the name. The emperor. At the
Oh
time.
yeah, the
Alis.
No,
No?
not that.
Oh, okay.
Gorgon, the Gorgon,
Nah.
the
Gorgon.
Emperor.
Gorgon. Yeah. Not an emperor, but whatever his title was
No,
in
it was Emperor.
Star Trek 6.
He declared himself Chancellor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. But yeah, so I wanted the idea. I like the idea of finishing up that storyline and seeing where it went. And I don't like a lot of things they did in that one because the books get kind of crazy sometimes. But I definitely wanted just to do a little bit with that and see where we go with it.
I've liked what you've done so far, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So I don't have much else unless you guys do. I know I promised to get the stuff up on the Patreon for the people who are listening, and I do have everything written. I just haven't had a chance to actually post on Patreon because I don't know. Like Jack said, sometimes you get busy and schedules get messed up and motivation goes away. And but I have the Europa Players Bible, the character crew sheet that we want to put up, the Europa itself, and it's all the ship stats that go with that. One race that we haven't encountered yet that we're going to encounter in an upcoming episode called the Lemurians, which actually another player from Brian's game and I basically created to be a character that he wanted to play, and then he wasn't able to play. The Aharen, which are the space whales. I've got some other stuff. The adventures are almost all done. I'm just doing layout, which I try to do at work, and then I inevitably get where I know how to use Adobe InDesign, which is a program that I don't find very intuitive. And then as soon as I figure out what I want to do, as I'm implementing it, we get a call and I have to go, and then I forget what I was doing. Just the way it works when you're doing stuff at work. So I will have stuff up on that soon. I do have episodes of the new podcast recorded. They are edited. I just have to finish putting in the opening and closing trailer stuff and then get those up. I know people have asked about the show on iTunes because we're behind, I think, 6 episodes on iTunes. One episode of which never actually got recorded properly. I have half an episode for that, which I'll put on Patreon. I guess have the second half of that came out okay, but the first half was totally just a disaster.
No.
So that was the first episode on the station. Fortunately, we do a pretty good recap, and a lot of that episode was just downtime getting to the station. So, I think maybe not. Anyway, that half that episode is gone. It's just gone. There's no getting it back. I'll put that half of the episode on the Patreon, and we'll get all that stuff up. Those are the raw episodes of those are now up on YouTube. They'll be accessible through Patreon only, and that's just the recordings that you would have gotten if you'd been watching it live. And the edited episodes of those are almost done, so I'll have everything done shortly. It's Adventure Inc. has taken up a lot of my time in the last couple weeks as well. So the shop is getting back online. This is, it's just life is. I don't know how I get anything done, but unless you guys have anything else you guys want to talk about.
Should we see if the audience has questions or anything? I don't know how many.
Yeah, feel free if anybody's out there that wants to ask questions. I actually don't have a list of who's on at the moment, so and a couple people have messaged. I don't know if anybody is still on, but feel free if you got questions, shoot them our way. We'll answer anything you got. And if you,
I was thinking of questions earlier.
Yeah.
I would be curious. What is one holodeck program that we could see involving a person's character? I was thinking about what holodeck characters, what holodecks programs my characters would be using, and I'm curious what holodeck programs your characters would be using that might come up in a game at some point.
Yeah. What holodeck program would you be playing in that I could then twist and turn into a holodeck episode? I have never done a holodeck episode on any of the games I've ever run.
I actually would like to see a holograph trip to Andor with Jisa and why am I always forgetting her name?
Cass?
Define, yeah.
Define? Okay.
Yeah, their ski date. I would love to see that somehow go awry.
I'm totally here for ski date.
We could also bring Cass into it, maybe as an unwelcome
as a third wheel.
Poor Cass.
Yeah.
Actually, having an episode, we're talking about C plots, B and C plots, an episode where part of the crew was trapped in a holodeck isn't a bad one. I've never run a holodeck adventure because it's so tropey in next gen. I just never did it. Not to say I don't run tropey episodes. I totally do, but
It can be fun.
one of the ones I've never done.
Yeah. What about you, Evelyn?
Nothing I can really think of offhand. In part because I've never really put much thought to it, and also in part because I am on the verge of becoming a pumpkin.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm just this morning started really early, and it was a super long day. So I've been kind of hanging on and listening for the last like 40 minutes.
I have to get up in 5 hours, so you know.
Oh, that's exciting.
I don't mean to draw things out if nobody's got anything.
No, that's cool.
It is a good thing to think about, though. I will have an answer for you eventually.
One thing I want you guys to do, if you can, I know we've talked about some of the focuses and values that the characters haven't really fit or haven't been exercised well. One thing I'm trying to do is write episodes with people's values in mind. I am not, as a GM, I am not particularly good at the values. Like I don't know, I'm not used to finding ways to challenge the values and things like that. So it's a thing I need to work on. But it's also a thing that I think that if you guys are thinking about as well, while you're playing the characters, of how to not just how to use them to benefit yourselves, but how to challenge them in certain ways. I think that could be, it's a good way to help think about the characters.
In that regard,
yeah.
Would it be okay if we just give values to our supporting characters? Because if we have to spend advances on it, it feels like a weird thing to spend because they can't use the values. So it's like there's no reason to, but I would love to give them values for flavor purposes, but it also feels weird spending an advance on something.
Oh, see, I was going to say if you spend
they can't use their values.
They don't get determination.
Right. So my thing is the way I look at it, and this is completely the way I see it, is the way we're playing the characters. If you give your character a value using a point, they would then be able to get determination.
Yeah, I thought that's how that worked.
Yeah, that's how I've envisioned it in my head all this whole time. So
that wasn't my read of it, but I have certainly been wrong in the past. So I might be wrong.
It's certainly a thing to think about too. Like the way I envision the secondary characters is less the mechanics of NPCs, but that's more how you created them, right? It's the other secondary characters. As you spend points in them, they become closer and closer to actual PCs. And if they become elevated to full PC status, as in Yezebeth taking over for Hage, you just add on the points you've spent on her you make her a main character, and then if you have points that would be able to carry over, like an arc point, you just keep the arc point.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was doing for Hage, and let me know if this is okay with you, I've just been banking his arc points because I figured since the symbiote is carrying over, those would carry over as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I don't.
Okay.
As long as you're, there's a certain point of doubling up on them. Like I don't want you to double dip on
no,
if Yezebeth is getting a ton of them and Hage is getting them.
No, she hasn't gotten any arc points. It's okay. I've just been keeping track of pages, and then I figure those will carry over.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
I have issued arc points to NPCs to the secondary characters as well, but if you're not counting them, it's fine.
Oh, have you? No, I've only done advancements, which are just bringing them slightly closer to player character status.
Right. Yeah, I've done those too. So, after the last session, I gave arc points to at least some, if not all, of the secondary characters. I don't remember.
Oh.
I missed that. I didn't realize you were.
Yeah, I think I missed that as well.
It's only happened, I think, once. So now you know.
Well, which ones did you give it to? I missed this completely.
I have to look back in the chat. It's in the Discord chat.
Okay,
it's going to be buried in there somewhere.
I think I thought you meant advancements instead of arc points.
No, it was because that was the end. That main storyline, or that main storyline, that 4-part storyline on the station had enough development, and almost everybody was involved in it, and it felt to me like a good. As I think Jack pointed out, it felt like a point where characters had really made, like everyone had kind of made a significant leap in story. So I thought that was a good time to give an arc point to any character that needed one.
Gotcha.
Okay. The only thing you said was yes to arc milestones.
Okay.
Yes to arc milestones all around.
Yeah, so everybody gets one. Every
Okay.
character gets one.
Okay.
Is how
That's cool.
how I
Okay.
intended that.
I won't give Elizabeth one though for the doubling up reason.
Right.
I will put this in here, and maybe eventually I'll actually update any of my characters.
Yeah.
Because I am bad at that.
Does that allow them to go over the maximum for supporting characters?
What do you mean? As long as it doesn't go over a maximum for a normal PC, it's fine.
Okay. Well, I don't think there are maximums for normal PCs.
I mean, 12. You can't go over 12.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
12 and 5, I think, right? Is it 12 and
Attributes.
12 and 5, and
Yeah,
I don't.
12 and 5.
You can have 400 values for all I care, as long as some of them come up as negatives. As long as you use them as negatives occasionally.
Yeah.
We should have
There-
a total
there is-
of 2 arcs for our mains. Is that right? Or are we at
I
3?
believe so. Yes.
Two for the mains and one for side
For
characters
each
involved
side.
in the Halaron system.
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as focuses and stuff, I know there is a limit to how many focuses you can have. I don't know. I don't remember ever reading where it is, but I'm pretty sure there is.
I think it's no. 8?
5?
Never mind. It's some number between 4 and 10.
Yeah, and I don't know what the number is, but you would be able to max out anything that has a limit for a PC is a limit for a secondary character at this point, because secondary characters are just lesser PCs at the moment.
Right.
And they advance slightly differently because you guys get the advancement points for playing them in sessions. Other than that, I don't really have much. I don't have anything else, and it's 9:30.
Yeah. I've got nothing else. I'm really glad we were able to talk about this. This was
For
good.
sure.
I enjoyed. I thank everybody for listening to all my rambling and complaining. Appreciate it.
It was this episode is a good example of how to communicate with your players and how your players communicate with each other. And it's an important thing to do when you're running games, which being that this is an online game with players I don't normally play with, I think it's important to do these every now and then, and we'll probably do some more in the future. So
Agreed.
on that note, I don't have anything else. Check us out. All the places that we are. Check out Studio Tembo. I did away with the Star Trek, the STA Engage website and rolled it into Studio Tembo, but it just redirects. So if you use that site, there it is. This stuff will all be up on iTunes. I do keep track of that stuff. And I know I'm running behind schedule, like way behind schedule, but the shop is almost done. The last coat of paint should be going on tomorrow or Thursday, depending on who goes and does it, because I work all day tomorrow. And if it doesn't get done tomorrow by somebody else, then I will finish it up Thursday. And yeah, we're like a week away from being able to open that back up, which is going to take a lot of my time. And then once I get that settled in, we'll be able to get back to I'll be able to focus a lot more on this again. So with the shop where it is, it's hard for me to guarantee any kind of anything. But again, like I said, we're almost done. Like I can actually see the finish line now, and I'm guessing it's going to move at some point because it always does. That shop is the largest moving goalpost I've ever had. But all right, I got nothing else, and yeah. So long. Thanks for all the fish.
All right. Awesome.